has been successful in rescuing the second crew member of the F-15E jet. And if you talk about both the countries were desperately looking for the second crew member. It was not just the United States that was indulging in the intensive search operation, but also Iran.
Well, just imagine if Iran would have successfully captured these two pilots, or even one. The kind of embarrassment America would have faced, in front of the world. That, look, you are one of the most powerful nation, one of the most powerful military, and now Iran has successfully not only struck down your F-15, the fighter helicopters, but also successfully even capturing your pilot. But this is remarkable. I mean, having seen and having read about so many military operations, so many war across the world, this is perhaps first time, and that's what exactly the President Trump mentioned, that perhaps in the history of military operations or even in the war, that any nation successfully have, rescued their two fighter pilots and from such a hostile enemy territory such as Iran. And probably it looks like the northern parts of Iran, totally, the rock area, the mountain areas. And even we have seen since a couple of days, there was heavy mobilization of not only the military or the para forces, but at the same time, civilians, the Iranians were also rushing to that side to be part of this operation. They also wanted to capture. In fact, the government television in Iran had also announced reward those who will be providing any information regards to the missing pilot. So, of course, the Iran was, using the infrared technology that comes in a public domain, that they strike down F-15. At the same time, they killed even the search and rescue helicopters. But two pilots in the Iranian territories, and remember even the kind of, infrastructure that Iran is putting at the moment to fight out the Middle East nations, America and Israel, the kind of effort it would have placed to find out those two missing pilots. Now, the President Trump and this statement coming from White House, that even during difficult time, while these two pilots being put in an enemy hostile territory, they were constantly in touch with the commander-in-chief. They were constantly in touch, and one of the pilot who's ranked to be the colonel, clearly it was such a remarkable, military operation, and one could imagine. And I would be surprised sooner or later you'll see a Hollywood literally making a film on that. We have seen many such operations. In fact, many of the evacuation have taken place of the military personnel in Afghanistan. There were certain, the small operations were carried out in Iraq. But this is for more than 24 hours, two American pilots who are literally in the enemy territory, in such a terrain of the mountain terrain. And remember, we have seen exactly in those areas, even the low-flying helicopters were shot down, were attempted to shot by the Iranians, even the locals, and that's a tribal-dominated area. But they were always in the communication with the commander-in-chief and their platoon. And at the same time, the information that is coming out, the kind of military apparatus and the infrastructure that was sent for the rescue operation, dozens of the helicopters, dozens of the flying objects, at the same time, heavily armed, and perhaps it looks like Marine or a Delta Force operation. As we know, the A-10 Thunderbolt planes were sent, and this is basically used for the ground support to the ground invasion in case of the American troops are planning to get down on the Iranian territory. So we can understand imaginably that how critical this operation was.
Absolutely, and Ashutosh. So there's this big development that is coming in amid this ongoing war, and after the F-15E jet was downed in Iran on Friday, the pilot was rescued, but the search operation was on to find the other crew member. And now there's a big development. US has claimed that it has recovered, rescued the other crew member from the downed F-15E jet, and this has been confirmed by US President Donald Trump himself. In fact, an intensive search operation was underway by the United States, but also by Iran. So Iran was also looking out for this crew member. And remember, this becomes even more crucial given the current situation. There's an ultimatum that has been issued by Donald Trump, the 48-hour ultimatum. The deadline to not hit the energy infrastructure ends tomorrow. So that is why it becomes even more significant. But this rescue operation that has been successful from the United States side also becomes even more significant, and it also acts as a boost to United States morale, as this serves as a psychological victory for the United States. Ashutosh continues to stay with us. Ashutosh, how significant would the capture of this crew member would have been for Iran. But Ashutosh, do stay with us. So we're now being joined by retired Major General Ashwini Sivach on the broadcast. He's a defense expert. So how do you see this big development? The other crew member who was missing since 2 days has been successfully rescued by the United States. Given the current situation, how do you look at this move? This is, of course, a psychological victory for the United States, and this, of course, gives United States also an edge.
Absolutely, Ted. No doubt about it. You know, that F-15 Strike Eagle, which was shot down, it had two pilots. One pilot was earlier basically got it safely from Iran, and now the second pilot has been rescued by U.S. security forces, especially the special forces. It is a boost. In fact, it will raise their morale, and it will show that U.S. does not leave their man behind. Now, they don't deny the fact that F-15, the Strike Eagle, which was shot, was unfortunate because that is a state-of-art aircraft. And the Iranis have used sensors which are infrared and which do not give any indication. So Iran has also upgraded its air defense system. But all said and done, that the fact that U.S. managed to rescue its second pilot also, it will raise the morale of the U.S. forces. But at the same time, what it seemingly looks, the war is now going to become more intense because the 48 hours deadline of opening a Strait of Hormuz is ending tomorrow. And in case Iran does not open, and which it is unlikely to open because that is a real leverage which is Iran available. You will find U.S. striking the energy sector and the power plants of Iran. And Iran will then reciprocate by hitting the energy sector in the Middle East, and then you will find the intensity will increase further and the damage will be very high, and you will find that food, fuel, fertilizer will go very high. In fact, the fuel, as far as oil is concerned, it will touch almost about $100 to $130 per barrel in case war starts again with that pace, and in case the Iran does not open Strait of Hormuz. And seeing all the ground reality, it is unlikely that the Iran is going to open that because this is the biggest leverage available to Iran. So overall, the way the situation is today, it is very dynamic, very fluid. The intensity of the war is going on, and Iran feels that it has an upper hand. But U.S. will now strike back after they have able to rescue the second pilot. So all said and done, you will find it in time to come that one, its intensity will increase, and second thing is that from the regional war, it can further go because China and Russia are going all out to support Iran.
Ashwini Sivach, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. So there's a big development that is coming to the fore. US has been successful in rescuing the second crew member of the F-15E jet that was downed by Iran. This happened on April 3rd, and search operations were underway to find the second crew member. The pilot was rescued by the United States, but the search operation was on to find the second crew member. Right now, we're being joined by Dr. Wael Awad, who is a West Asia expert. Dr. Awad, how do you look at this big development that is being reported at this moment? It's a big psychological victory for the United States in this ongoing war. The second crew member of the F-15E jet that was downed in Iran, he has been rescued successfully by the United States in this intensive rescue operation that was underway. And it is also important to note how Iran was also making all the efforts in order to search and nab the second crew member.
Thank you for having me, Anjali. I believe a pilot fell into a very rural areas and very mountain region where the people were searching the Iranian. However, the Americans have the technology and the sophisticated equipment. They track them because they are already under the radars of any American pilot. So if according to the American sources that this operation has been done, definitely it's a big boost. As I can read right now, the tweet of the President Trump about the major operation, one of the most successful operations of the American history in the military. So this is a boost for him, no doubt about it, because one of the main reasons for the United States that it's still going on with this war, despite the fall down of the Trump popularity in the United States is because there is no coffins going back to the United States. So this is one of the major issues, that he can boost his morale and he can continue his bombardment and employment of heavy weaponries around Iran.
How significant would it have been for Iran to capture the crew member as a prisoner of war, given the current situation? There's an ultimatum, 48-hour ultimatum, that has been issued by Donald Trump, and he's pressurizing Iran to come on the negotiation table. The deadline is ending tomorrow.
Yes, it would have been a very big boost for the Iranian. In fact, we have no report till now from the Iranian side, because according to certain report coming from Iran, they were saying that he is in the captivity of the Iranian. Now, if the Americans think that we rescued him, I think it's also a setback for the Iranian government. Were unable to capture him, because it had been a kind of a bargain chips for Iran to put it on the table when they discuss with the American. And the second most important part in this is that the Americans are preparing now for a large onslaught on Iran, with the deadline is approaching. And I know that the president have declined or deferred his deadlines three times, but this time with the intentions of destroying the Iranian infrastructure and the civilian target, it gives you that we have entered the second most dangerous phase of this war in West Asia, where we notice now that it is not going to be more regional, it's going to go beyond the regional. It's going to be a global war, not only on the effect of the food security and oil security, but also in terms of the impact of this war and bringing more stakeholders or parties into this quagmire.
Dr. Awad, as we're just hours away from the April 6th deadline, the ultimatum has also been issued. What we're also learning, as per reports, is that the arsenal is also being moved from other regions, specifically from the Pacific, which was meant for China. The US is now moving this arsenal to West Asia. What does that say about what could happen next after this deadline?
That's exactly what I have been saying, that the United States is moving its strategic weapon, including the long-range missile, which is DSSM, which is considered to be one of the major, attractive rockets America can use, like the Tomahawk. So in that case, this is also fall in the American strategy. They wanted to avoid any shooting down of an American airplane in the space of the Iran. So by keeping this distance safe for the Americans, they can continue to bombard Iran. So if that is the long-haul war, this is actually one of the worst scenarios we are expecting right now in the region. There are scenarios that could be the negotiation, cessation of activities, come down to the table and discuss. But the other scenario, which is bad, that if this war continues for a longer period, it is going to be a catastrophe for the United States and for the rest of the world, including the Iranian, by the way.
But Dr. Awad, can this move also embolden other U.S. enemies like China and Russia, with US now moving the arsenal towards West Asia?
I don't think in terms of the technology and the Star War, which is expecting that it can take place between the United States and China, because the only threat to the United States, as per the American military doctrine, is China, and Russia has been isolated into a regional war with Ukraine. So they cannot deal with China at the moment, and I don't think China is wanted to go for any sort of war with the United States, because the more the United States is sinking in the Persian Gulf, the more the Russian and the Chinese are happy that it is exhausting the United States for a war which is not of the American choice.
Right. And Dr. Awad, what we have also been witnessing in this ongoing war is that there have been repeated attacks that have been carried out on the nuclear sites, on the nuclear cities, the nuclear hubs. They have also not remained untouched, and there have been not just one or two attacks, but numerous attacks on these sites. How dangerous could it be? And in fact, in the latest, if we talk about the Bushehr facility that was attacked by the US and Israel, that is very much in close proximity to the allies of the US itself.
Absolutely, Angela. You touched the very most important worries for all the region. In fact, if the radiation is being emitted from those nuclear sites, it will be a catastrophe for all the people. Again, the most important part, if Iran retaliate and attack the Mona installation in Israel, where Israel already in having a nuclear program and more than 200 nuclear arsenals there with them, it is going to be a catastrophe for all of us. I mean, the whole of the area would be, burn and people will die of the radiation. So I think what we should do as an international community is make sure that enough pressure put on the United States and Israel to end all the cessation. Otherwise, it's going to be a catastrophe. Look at the frustration the American and the Israelis are now. They have attacked 12,000 targets so far in Iran, and they're saying we have a 9,000 more in our banks of target to attack according to their artificial intelligence warfare, which they are using it in this war. So if that is the case, then now they are starting to attack the water installation, the energy installation, bridges. I mean, this is a crime against the human. It's a war crime. How can you attack a bridge which was under construction? That's not a military target. I mean, the war secretary of the United States is fit to go to Hague to be tried there like other criminals. This is a war crime.
Dr. Awad, what do you think is a win-win situation now? Because if we talk about the demands that are being raised by both the sides, they are completely contradictory, completely opposite to what each of the sides has been claiming. So the negotiations seem highly unlikely with just few hours remaining for the deadline, the April 6th deadline. What do you think could be a win-win situation at this stage, if there could be any?
Actually, there is no win-win situation in any kind of a war. The only situation here is to end all the hostilities, which the United States and Israel in particular is not ready to do so. In fact, they have put a target for the next 2 weeks. They wanted to completely eradicate Iranian infrastructure in every aspect of the war. So that is, Iran will not stop. If you continue the bombardment, that means you are also giving a chance to the Iranians to attack the neighboring countries and Israel again. So that will make it more of a quagmire. As I said, it's widening of this war by attacking a civilian areas. So if that is the case, then we are going for a long haul war. It's nothing to put an end. The only way of putting it to an end is Americans should recognize and realize that if any more attack on the infrastructure of a civilian, thinking that they can make the Iranians put pressure on them to bring down their government, they are doing wrong. That's not a war. This is actually destroying a civilization in Asia.
Right, Dr. Wael Awad, do stay with us. My colleague Pranay Upadhyay is also joining us. He's joining us from the war zone. He's joining us from Israel. And Pranay, there's just few hours that are left for the April 6th deadline to end, and we've already seen the ultimatum that have been issued by Donald Trump, and we've also seen there's a big boost for US itself with the rescue of the second crew member.
Absolutely. And in fact, you must have read the social media post made by President Donald Trump, wherein he not only triumphed on this victory, on this successful rescue operation, but he also indicated that, United States is going to beat Iran, and we have most lethal weapons. We have sent most lethal weapon for the rescue of this pilot. Dr. Abad was precisely right on the count that, what we are witnessing right now is a very dangerous phase of this escalation and this conflict, because from now onward, if there is an escalation of the firepower, if there is an escalation or the broadening of the conflict zone, then we are looking at a long haul. We are looking at a situation where the global economy have to take a massive hit, because we have already witnessed over a month of disruption in energy supplies. We have seen the mounting inflationary pressure on many economies, including the economy of India. And what we are witnessing right now, that there is no negotiation which is heading in a direction of any kind of a solution. Rather, President Donald Trump's deadline is expected to end at around 5:30 a.m. India time on 7th of April morning. So clearly, we are hardly a few hours away from that deadline. And in fact, this deadline, before ending, before conclusion of the deadline, we don't see any indication, neither from Tehran nor from Washington D.C., that there could be some kind of a solution. There could be some kind of some breakthrough. And in fact, just now I'm looking at some social media posts coming from Tehran and Iranian state media, indicating that during the rescue operation as well, the Iranian forces have fired at some of the American aircraft, and they have claimed downing one aircraft in Isfahan. We have to wait for a confirmation, but certainly this is also another big claim being made by the Iranian Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And what we have witnessed in last 24 hours in Israel, that over 300 missile alerts were sounded in last 24 hours across Israel. And what we are witnessing, that there is a coordinated pattern of attack over Israel. In the northern part of Israel, we witnessed that, how Hezbollah and Iran are coordinating. In the southern part of Israel, we are witnessing that how Houthis from Yemen and Iran are coordinating. And in fact, the central part of Israel, where I am right now, in the city of Tel Aviv and in nearby area, the Iranian missiles have rained in last few hours. However, the Israeli missile defense system have successfully thwarted and in fact neutralized all these incoming projectiles. No major damage reported from Israel in last 24 hours, but certainly there is an escalation. The missiles are still coming and able to trying to penetrate the Israeli missile defense system.
All right, Pranay, do stay with us. We'll come back to you for more updates. Dr. Awad is also with us. Dr. Awad, one last question. U.S. President Donald Trump has been claiming U.S. air supremacy, and we have been seeing how the fighter jets are being knocked down in the Iranian airspace. And also, one thing is clear, given the latest developments, what we're witnessing, the diversion of arsenal, that there's going to be a massive escalation, also given the ultimatum that has been issued by Donald Trump. But do you think this is going to be a prolonged conflict? Because if we look at the current situation, the U.S. already seems to be a bit exhausted as far as the weapon and the missile and the arsenal is concerned.
Well, I believe, Anjali, that the American president is not briefed correctly by the ongoing war on the ground. The reality that though they have succeeded, look like a cowboys operation or a commandos of rescuing one pilot, but in terms of the damage that they have been causing, the Iranian uprooting 13 military bases in the region and destroying most of the American installation, including the sophisticated radar and anti-missile system. It's a clear indication that the president is not being briefed. And secondly, which is the most important part, is that Hexed, the war secretary himself, forcing the chief of the army staff to retire in the mid of the war, it's a clear indication that the military surrounding the American president currently, in fact, they are the people who are saying, yes, either you are with us in this war or you retire. So that is the message the American defense industry is doing. So for this, there is a opposition for any kind of a ground forces invasion of Iran at this moment by any American boot on the ground. But yet they are giving them the picture, that a glory picture of American power and might, that they are winning this war. And I think that is the most dangerous part, where the American president has to be giving a second thought of what's going on the ground. Otherwise, if the allies of the United States who are refusing to take part of this war are unable to tell the United States, stop this war, I think is going to be a catastrophe for all of us.
Dr. Awad, speaking from India's perspective, all eyes are on the Strait of Hormuz. If at all the situation escalates, it worsens, do you think the entire the globe, it is going to have implications globally, and India will also have to pay the price for it? Because if the situation worsens, Donald Trump has already talked about Strait of Hormuz, and then will we also be bearing the brunt of it in the coming days?
Look, the war have already had its impact on the Strait of Hormuz. Prior to the war, it was peacefully, safely passing, no complication for any country. Now, definitely the crude oil and the And the food also has been reduced tremendously from this because of the war, because the United States is changing its goals of this war. First they speak of the nuclear, then they speak of a regime change, then they talk about Hormuz. Hormuz was open, you don't need to go there. The United States now speaking openly, not only the oil of Iran we are after. He's saying we're going to capture Hormuz and then we'll make lots of money. Look at the attitude that the American putting the rest of the world at risk, and we as a common man suffering. Even the American, by the way, are suffering, American people, because the global trade and the global oil has been impacted tremendously. Now it is partially closed. India has to fasten its belt as well. And I'm also always advocating that India, irrespective whether they are anti or pro, this war is illegal, illegitimate, violation of international. India has to put its foot on the ground and tell to the rest of the world that this war has to stop. I have 10 million Indians living in this region, apart from my food security and oil security, at risk because of this unnecessary war.
All right, Dr. Wael Awad, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast and for your perspective on the ongoing developments in this West Asia war that is already raging on for 37 days. Today is the 37th day. The war has entered its 6th week. Thank you, Dr. Awad. So that is the latest development as far as this ongoing war is concerned. Pranay Upadhyay also continues to stay with us from the war zone, from Israel. Pranay, Iran has been mounting its attack on Israel, and not just on Israel, but also on the other Gulf countries. We've been seeing there were attacks on Kuwait and Bahrain. In fact, in Kuwait, desalination plants and power plants have been targeted.
Absolutely, Anjali. In last 12 hours, what we have witnessed that while the Israeli Air Force targeted the petrochemical facilities in Iran, and after that, in a retaliatory action, Iran has not only fired missiles targeting Israel, but they have also targeted many facilities across the Gulf GCC countries. And in fact, reports coming in from Bahrain that there is a firefighting going on right there, and in fact. There are efforts to douse the fire in Bahrain. There are efforts that there are efforts underway in UAE as well, and the UAE air defense system is trying to neutralize the incoming missiles and drones. Besides that, reports are also coming in from Kuwait that they have to shut down two of their plants, and in fact, the situation remains very grim in terms of the infrastructure damage sustained by all these.
Stay with us. We're now being joined by retired Colonel Jeffrey Fisher. He's a retired colonel of U.S. Army and CEO of Fisher Aerospace Consulting, and he's joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Fisher, how do you look at this big development that is being reported? The U.S. has been successful in carrying out the rescue operation of the second crew member of the F-15E jet that was downed in Iran on April 3rd. What does this say about the combat operations and the rescue operations by the United States?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, and good morning here from from Vienna. I think the first thing it says is there's going to be a lot of people in the United States that are going to wake up and feel like their prayers were answered for Easter Sunday, which is really, really great. But it also, I think this speaks to, from the reports that I'm seeing, this speaks to a highly well-planned, sophisticated combat search and rescue, along with special operations teams working together in a coordinated and concerted fashion to go in and rescue this downed air crew member. He did all of his, from everything we're seeing, he did all of his training correctly, right? So when you do your combat search and rescue training as an air crew member, like all the things you're supposed to do, and I think back to when I did that years ago, it seems like he did everything right, and then just kind of hunkered down and waited. Stayed out of the eyes of the enemy and waited for the team to come in, and it went off without a hitch. I know that there's been some excessive fighting that was going on in Iran. That's also being reported, and the fact, and at this time they're not reporting any casualties, and they recovered every single person out of there is somewhat phenomenal.
Right. And how significant do you think it would have been for Iran if Iran would have been successful in tracing the second crew member and capturing him as a prisoner of war?
Yeah, your question's spot on, right? Because this was going to be a bargaining chip for Iran. if Iran was able to recover this downed aircrew member, it gives them a upper hand at the negotiation table, or at least a negotiating chip in a table that's covered with many different chips. I wouldn't say it would be the end all be all, and it would be something that would force the United States to relent in some form or fashion, but it definitely would be an important one, right?
Right, and how do you think the U.S. would have been able to locate and trace the second crew member? How was he able to send any detail about his location to the CIA?
Yeah, well, I'm only hearing bits and pieces at this point, but I will tell you what I've learned, which we always be very cautious of first reports. So I'll put that caveat out there, right? Is that when he landed, he found high ground. He turned on his beacon. So every aircrew member has a unique beacon that they fly with in their ejection seat or in their survival gear. And once he knew that he was safe and that he could turn his beacon on, he got to a place. That beacon would be collected as information from U.S. intelligence assets and from other aircraft, and it would start what we would call direction finding or fixing on his location. So he doesn't even have to talk anymore. This is a discrete beacon. He can say, hey, obviously he's alive because he turned on the beacon. And so everyone kind of knew at that point, he was okay. Probably communicated and said, hey, look, I've got a good hold-up position. There's no need for you to come get me right now because it would be very dangerous. Everyone's looking. He sought shelter. He secured his location. And this does a couple things, right? The first thing it does is it gives the U.S. combat search and rescue teams time to mission plan, right? So it gives them time to look at where he's at, find ingress, egress routes, look at where the defense systems are, do a concerted plan where they actually can do an exercise, if you will, and walk through it on a tabletop and go, okay, hey, yeah, this is where he is. This is our ingress route. This is where we're going to leave. This is where we're expecting fire from. All these types of things are critically important. And then they could go in and execute it at the right time. And as I've kind of predicted when I was on your show earlier, the United States military owns the night. If there was going to be a rescue operation that went in, it was going to happen at the night because we're extremely proficient at working on night vision devices as if it's daytime. And for us, it's just normal operating procedure.
In fact, carrying out such rescue operations in such a hostile terrain like Iran is also not common, and we've not seen much of it in the past.
Well, we've not seen a lot of it because, thank God we don't lose too many airplanes from the United States side. Then we would see a lot of it. But this is a special bond between U.S. military aircrew members and the search and rescue guys. Their motto, by the way, is so that others may live. Combat search and rescue guys are a unique breed. When they're called to go, they don't say, the weather's too bad or the mission's too dangerous. They just go, and they're supported by some of the most capable ground forces in the world and the elite ground forces. They're supported by U.S. SEALs and Delta Force and Rangers that will go in and help protect the ground situation. These are small teams that operate, but I realized that the IRGC was there and that there was a lot of fighting, but I would tell you getting between combat search and rescue teams and the asset that they're trying to pull out is almost akin to like getting between a lion and his dinner. It's not a wise move.
Right. Colonel Fisher, there were also reports as per U.S. officials who were claiming that there was also a massive firefight that took place during the rescue operation.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some breaking video. It has to obviously be confirmed that it's correct, but there's a lot of there's some pretty graphic video that's going around right now on social media suggesting that the IRGC took some pretty extensive losses in engaging with U.S. Special Forces, which again is an unwise move in my opinion.
Right, and let's also talk about what the latest development, what we're learning as per reports is that the United States is also now diverting its arsenal and its missiles to West Asia. This also comes amid the background of the ultimatum that has been issued by Donald Trump, the 48-hour ultimatum, the April 6th deadline that is nearing, the pause that is ending on the energy infrastructure strikes.
Yeah, so that deadline, right? We have to understand it's President Trump, and sometimes he makes ultimatums and then he changes his mind somewhat quickly after that. He did make an ultimatum a couple weeks ago, and then he relented on that, and he believed that there was some good negotiations going on. We, I think, as the general public, will never know how extensive those were, or if they were even happening. But I would suggest that now that the United States has recovered this aircrew member, and if there's no progress in peace negotiations and Iran capitulating to the U.S. to position, that deadline's probably going to happen, and the retaliation that or what Donald Trump is threatening is going to take place.
Right. Retired Colonel Jeffrey Fisher, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast and for all those details on this rescue operation that has been successfully carried out by the United States. United States has been able to rescue the second crew member of the F-15E jet, and this is of great significance amid the given situation, the current situation between US and Iran. With that, it's a wrap on this bulletin. Thank you for watching India Today. We'll get you more updates on this ongoing West Asia war on the other side. Keep watching India Today.
You are watching India Today. Director, The Taste of Success.
எல்லாரும் பேசுவாங்க நான் காட்டுவேன் ரராஜதீப் சர்தேசாய் இந்தியன் பொலிட்டிக்கல் லீக் மைண்ட் இட்
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Over 30 days of war later, where does it all stand? Is this a war with no winner at all? India Today's War Council decodes. Whether there's an end game in sight, or are we heading into an infinity war? It's the India Today OSINT War Report Card that's our special focus.
Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast. I'm Gaurav Sawant. It's been over 1 month of US and Israel's war with Iran and massive destruction. Reports of escalation. But who's on top of the situation right now? Who's been able to achieve their stated war aims? Because principles of war are very clear about classification of aim and then maintenance of aim for victory. So today on this special broadcast, we assess the stated aims and objectives, and the India Today open source intelligence team and our editors on ground, they weigh in on who've been able to achieve their aims or which side's closer to achieving their aims. So let's talk about the US and Israel's stated war objectives and where they stand today. Step 1. What was the stated aim? Stop Iran from becoming a nuclear power. Has President Trump been able to achieve that? Perhaps not just as yet. So not achieved after 1 month. Aim 2, weaken the regime and trigger a regime change from within. Now, has that been achieved? No, not so far. The leadership, it has taken blows, but the command and control system, does it remain intact? Does it hold? All indications are, as of now, it holds. Aim 3, destroy Iran's ability to pose a credible military threat beyond its borders. Now, there's tactical success, but not complete success even on that front. The missile and drone threat, it remains. In fact, it seems to be escalating. Iran's ability to project its power beyond its borders, it remains intact. So we will do a deep dive, discuss this, all aspects of this. So joining me now on this special broadcast, India Today's Foreign Affairs editor, Geeta Mohan. She's traveled to Iran, of course, just before the conflict. Also with us is Ankit Kumar, editor, Open Source Intelligence. And Ankit's been working very extensively on this project. And Sandeep Punithan, senior journalist and author, also joining us on this broadcast. Pranay Upadhyay will join us from Tel Aviv, and Tel Aviv remains in the line of fire. We'll talk about it, but top war aim, stop Iran from becoming a nuclear weapon. Remember the 12-day war in 2025? Both US and Israel, they bombed Natanz, they bombed Fordo, they bombed Isfahan. They claimed Iran's nuclear abilities had been obliterated. The facilities had been obliterated. Wasn't that the terminology used? But has that war aim been achieved? Not in those, and 8 months later now, they're bombing it again. In fact, even as we speak, bombing continues. So Ankit, your assessment of achieving this aim?
When June 2025 happened, Donald Trump, as the president of US and the commander of the US military, made this claim that they have obliterated the nuclear weapons program of Iran. Now, before Feb 27th, a day before the strikes happened, this was the prime goal, to strip Iran away from its nuclear capability. Now, as we speak today, there is Isfahan, where still more than 400 kilograms of enriched uranium, which is believed to sit inside a mountain tunnel, which even the B-2 bombers with the bunker buster bombs cannot penetrate. So that prime target of that war has not been achieved as we speak.
Geeta, your assessment, you've traveled to Iran, you've spoken to Iranian leadership. the 27th of February situation and the situation today?
Well, it doesn't seem like most of the objectives that were spelled out have been met. But just on the first objective that we're focusing on, the nuclear program, I'll go a little further from what Ankit just mentioned. Not only have they not achieved this objective, they've lost sight of the uranium itself, Gaurav. At least they then knew that it is in this site and the amount. Now they do not know where the uranium is. So where are they going to go, even if they want to achieve this target, right?
That's very interesting.
Where are they going to go and look for the uranium? They now need intelligence to figure out where the uranium is. Is it in that plant? Is it hidden somewhere else? Has it been decentralized,
Because
as
there
Sandeep
is an
keeps
argument,
saying?
Gaurav. Could the US administration have achieved more through diplomacy than what they have been able to achieve
That's a
through
very
bombing?
important point.
You know, because had they discussed, like on the 27th of February, Sandeep, Oman, the foreign minister went on record to say they're open to all scrutiny, they're open to IAEA. That route perhaps would have ensured that the 440 kilograms of enriched uranium was in control. Today, they're talking about Plan A and Plan B and Plan C of sending in the SEAL Team 6 or Marines or Special Forces.
Absolutely, Gaurav. You know, on the 27th of February, there were 4 asks that the United States had of Iran. Ask number 1 was to cap the nuclear weapons program, the nuclear enrichment program. Ask number 2 was to hand over the 440 kilos of highly enriched uranium to about 60%. Ask number 3 was to completely dismantle the ballistic missile program and the drone program. And the 4th one, of course, is to dismantle the axis of resistance, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas. And a month later, the United States is not close to achieving either of them. None of these 4 war objectives have been achieved. And it is in all, kind of confusion. They're stumbling around looking for Plan B, Plan C, Plan D, Plan E.
Okay, unless the aim, and their aims keep changing. Was regime change actually one of their stated goals, or did they want to weaken the regime so much that people would trigger a regime change from within? Words to that effect. President Donald Trump had indicated that high-value targets have been eliminated, leadership has been taken down from Ayatollah Ali Khamenei himself to Ali Larijani to Ms. Shamkhani to the defense minister, to multiple top leaders have been taken down. But has the regime collapsed? On the contrary, the information is that there's new leadership that's in place. The command and control structure, Sandeep, does it remain intact? So has second aim been met?
Absolutely not, Gaurav. You know, the most important takeaway from this war is that Iran's command and control, the C2 that Iran has put into place over the last couple of decades, that is intact. It remains intact. It is firing missiles and drones at the GCC countries, at American air bases. It's bringing down American aircraft. This was the most important thing that the United States and Israel had to do, which is to disrupt Iran's C2. They've not been able to do that, and as a consequence of which, Iran is able to escalate. It is to maintain, it is able to, dominate the escalation ladder, Gaurav.
Ankit, you looked into the command and control system. How powerful is the Basij? How powerful is the IRGC? What is the command and control structure? It remains intact, does it?
The command and control structure remains intact, but the Iranians definitely have taken lessons from last year's 12 days war. After the last year's 12 days war, what they have done was they had anticipated that some kind of lethal attack will first target the command and control structure. So, as you have reported several times, there is a mosaic system, decentralized units with pre-assigned targets. But the pictures that we are showing today, we have to tell our viewers why we have chosen these 4 or 5 metrics. Because in the fog of war, what happens is people start to count numbers, how many jets, how many people, how many vessels. Sometimes it is important to remember what was the key objective for which a country decided to go to war.
True.
In this case, the people who have replaced the 15, 16 odd leaders who have been killed, there is no evidence to suggest that their philosophical ideology, their political ideology is any different from the people who were in the power before them. So that key objective has not been made, as a result of 1 month of war.
Geeta, you were on ground zero. You'd spoken, you've interviewed Sayyid Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister of Iran, and he seemed to have indicated this even before the first bomb was fired.
Absolutely. He said, we are prepared. We are preparing and we're prepared. I'm going to Geneva, but I do know that we cannot trust America. He said that and he left. But more importantly, Gaurav, you're talking to a very top Iranian official, and what he explained and why the regime, the objective is not met, is that there is a 7-layer succession plan that Iran has.
7-layer succession
plan. And we are putting that out in our Statecraft show this evening. The 7-layer succession plan is not just for the top leadership or the cabinet. It is decentralized. Every commander was told that you need to choose 7 successors after you when you are sitting, when you're in office.
The strongest Iranian weapon in this war has been the Iranian bureaucracy.
Yes.
Okay.
7
they
layers.
call themselves a civilization state. They have a system which is very solid, Geeta.
If the top leadership was taken out on day 1, if the second tier has been taken out in the attacks that followed, we are looking at 7 layers down. How long can America sustain a leadership that goes one after the other? And the replacement happens almost immediately. The Supreme Council sat and decided on Mujtaba almost immediately.
Okay.
I mean, even if you give it a few days, that's immediate.
Oh, absolutely. Now let's move to objective number 3, and we'll keep circling back to some of these issues as the story develops, because one of the stated objectives was ensure that Iran does not pose a credible threat beyond its borders, that it's not in a position to project its power beyond its borders, neutralize what remains of their air power. They anyway have very old aircraft, but their missiles, their drones, their rockets, their sea power, 150 odd ships have been sunk, but after sinking 150 odd ships, do they still remain a potent threat? And Sandeep, militarily, let me start with you on this aspect. The moment 150 ships were sunk, and President Trump in his address said, they don't have a navy, it's been obliterated. They said, then are Martians from outer space blockading the Strait of Hormuz?
Exactly, Gaurav. You know, and here's the irony that a country that's lost heavily at sea, it's lost a lot of its warships, is continuing with its choke point strategy. And Iran has developed this choke point strategy over the last several decades. They've learned from the lessons of the war with Iraq, and they've refined it after 2003. And today their choke point strategy, they threaten 3 of the world's 7 choke points. 3 of them are on the Arabian Peninsula. That is, of course, the Strait of Hormuz, which they have blocked, the Bab el-Mandab, which they control indirectly through their proxies, the Houthis, and the Suez Canal, which they can target with their ballistic missiles. So this choke point strategy is very unique, and the bigger lessons for this are for China, because Gaurav, the Chinese have worked out on a much bigger strategy, and this is what would be giving the American generals and admirals sleepless nights, that if a small power like Iran, after losing its navy, having its air force decimated, is able to choke some of the most important maritime choke points in the world, how will China play this out with the United States, a near peer adversary of the United States? So those are big imponderables from this crisis.
And if I could just add,
yes,
they completely decimated Iran's air defense system, but you're still looking at Iran trying to down aircraft. So you have to.
There is a different element to it, right? We will come to that. For Navy, we have a different metrics. We will come again on the Navy part.
Explain.
What we mean by to stop Iran from projecting power beyond its boundaries. Now, this phrase is again coined by the Department of State. Secretary Rubio has said it. CENTCOM has said it multiple times. Earlier, before Feb 28, Iran's ability to project power remained limited with firing drones, missiles if needed, and then supply, help Houthis, help Hezbollah, help Hamas in any ways they can. Now today, what they have done is, they have weaponized its geography, and now they can push one button, one person firing one bullet with a very small vessel. That is not even a Navy fleet. Small vessel, small artillery round. And what they can do is, they can choke the entire supply their sphere of influence is no longer limited to West Asia. It covers us, it goes beyond us, east of Asia, it even covers Europe. So what this war has done is, in fact, this is one matrix where not only US has failed, it has failed at a very grand scale, because it has actually increased Iran's sphere of influence. Iran now has a higher bargaining power because of the Strait of Hormuz.
Some talk of some reduction, but not elimination. At the peak of the conflict, on the 2nd of March, Iran unleashed this massive barrage. This was a massive barrage of 778 projectiles in a single day. Now, that was an attempt to completely overwhelm US and Israeli defenses and hit them, whether in Israel or US interests in the region. But that's dropped to about 100, stabilizing between 80 and 100. But those launches haven't stopped. And perhaps they're better quality now, Geeta, and that would be a threat. The manner in which some of the precision-guided munition is hitting vital assets and vital points, Geeta.
That's right. The exact conversation we've had since the beginning of the war, Gaurav, that while Israel has intelligence, absolute intelligence when it comes to what they want to hit, how they want to hit America and Israel, I think Iran also has clear intelligence, and the missiles and drones have proven quite effective in terms of precision strikes. There are no there's no Minab school incident that has taken place in the whole of West Asia, and they've hit at every US base in West Asia.
Okay, Ankit?
So obviously, if you see the data, for first 2 weeks, there is a visible decline in terms of total number of drones added with total number of ballistic missiles fired from Iran towards the GCC countries as well as Israel. Now, never in my dreams I would have imagined that there will come a day when Iran will fire more missiles and drones in a single day, or even if we count the total average, more missiles, more drones at UAE than on Israel in an Israel versus Iran war. Now, there's a story to it.
Okay.
Just because we are showing that US is not achieving, that does not mean Iran is doing extremely well on all these matrices. What this war has also done is, although US has not won this round also, it has exposed the limitations of Iranian missile capabilities. What happens is, Iranian ballistic missiles, they work very well, ranges are very good, but the moment they cross the 500-kilometer mark, we don't know the kind of warheads they are carrying. In case you add them with cluster munitions, heavier munitions, the precision ability we have seen, it tends to go down. And that is why data tells us that even today, the number of military targets hit by Iran are nowhere close to the number of civilian targets, not even dual-use targets, civilian targets hit by Iran.
So you're saying they're firing random, they're hitting whatever they can, whoever they can, Sandeep, and you know, their drones closer to their locality, to their area, especially in the GCC countries, they're able to hit precision targets, but when it comes to Israel, they're not able to hit so precisely.
Absolutely, Gaurav. You know, and for the reason that Israel is so heavily defended by the Iron Dome and, you know, a layered air defense system, a layered ground-based air defense system, which can tackle everything from RPG rounds right up to hypersonic long-range ballistic missiles. So that is the kind of hard, you know, hard kill system that the Israelis have put into place over decades, and they keep refining it. The UAE is not as heavily defended as Israel, and that is one of the reasons that Iran has been striking at the UAE. But Gaurav, the big thing here is that possibly never in the history of combat has one country simultaneously attacked so many countries over a geographical span of 3,000 kilometers.
Oh, absolutely.
What
from
the
Cyprus.
Iranians, from Cyprus, from the Mediterranean Sea to the Arabian Sea. And this is some capability that the Iranians will keep modifying and keep, you know, sharpening for the next round, if there is one after this.
So just to sum this up, Gaurav,
okay,
even this achievement to curtail or neutralize Iranian threat of firing missiles and drones beyond its boundaries, even that target has not been achieved, because based on numbers, over past 3 weeks, the number has been consistent from Iran's side.
So between 80 and 100. Yes. So one of the stated objectives was ensure that Iran, the armed forces of Iran or the regime in Iran is not in a position to project power beyond its borders. Not only is it still projecting its power beyond its borders, but as Sandeep mentioned, from the Mediterranean Sea to the Arabian Sea and beyond, because the threat, it's not just the physical targeting, it's the threat that they can choke Bab al-Mandab through the Houthis in Yemen, and they can choke the Suez Canal, and the threat of the non-traditional threat, as they say, terror in Europe, terror in the United States of America, terror in different parts of the country, of the world. Now that also has the world on tenterhooks, Geeta, and this is where, once again, any of the objectives the Americans had of a swift operation, in and out, decapitate, people will rise. On the contrary, Iran seems to be at least looking stronger after 1 month.
Absolutely, and it's not in the metrics, but the one thing that I'd say is, while America keeps saying, why aren't you helping us, and asking Europe and asking NATO, all of that is happening. If you ask Iran, Iran says we do not want anybody's help. Although we do know that, there's a lot of intelligence and real-time intelligence sharing between Russia and Iran, according to reports, maybe China and Iran as well. But the fact that on the record, Iran says we do not need anybody, we can defend ourselves. And on record, Trump has been seeking and asking help and then saying, you go take back Hormuz on your own, is a telling and a stark difference in how they're approaching the war itself.
Okay. So before I bring in Ankit,
I think there was one matrix which kind of we have reshuffled there. There's one matrix on which Americans seem to have achieved the objective. That was tackling. We know that Iran did not have a very good air force, but containing and neutralizing Iranian navy. Sandeep will tell you better. They had the subs, but so far we have not seen any indication. Now imagine, even if 2 or 3 of their subs would have survived this first 30 days of attack, or were operational, we don't know, but we have not seen any sign. Imagine if those subs were in action today. Imagine the visuals had they been able to target any of the USCSG, or for that matter, reach close to Israel. So that particular element has been neutralized successfully, as it appears, by the American forces. This is one matrix on which they have done well.
That may be cold comfort for the simple reason, Sandeep, the undersea drones and the large number of fast attack crafts and undersea drones that they have, no ship would dare come anywhere close to the Strait of Hormuz unless with Iran's permission.
Absolutely, Gaurav. And so, this is Iran, fashioning its warfare based on its geographical advantage that it has.
Asymmetric warfare.
Asymmetric warfare combined with the narrow shallows of the Strait of Hormuz. The Persian Gulf is a shallow stretch of, sea that you can barely operate. It's 50 meters.
Yes.
It's a very shallow sea. Iranians have used their geography where they dominate through islands, through that rocky coastline, to project all these unconventional asymmetric weapons of power like unmanned surface vessels, old-fashioned mines which have been around for hundreds of years, sea mines, all of these things, fast attack craft, they're never really good at conventional war fighting in the sense that submarines or conventional air force. They've not had a very good air force in several decades. But what they have done is they've leveraged these low-cost asymmetric tools of warfare, which is ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and of course drones, which they are the world leaders today in low-cost one-way attack aircraft like the Shahed 136, which the Americans are very proudly saying we have reverse-engineered Iranian Shahed.
And made them the Lucas drones of theirs. But, even when we say that Iran doesn't have an air defense system, Ankit, Iran, according to reports from Tehran, seems to have either winged or taken down an F-15. There apparently is a pilot missing.
Picture of
Of an ejection seat. Of course, in the fog of war, we're still waiting for official confirmation to come in. But this would indicate that despite 13,000 bombing raids being carried out. Some of the air defense system remains intact.
13,000 are just the targets. The number of munitions would be much more than that. That's where 1, 2, 3 key elements come in. First is the manpads, shoulder power. One person can take down a low-flying drone or a low-flying aircraft. It's not a very advanced technology, but Iran is not fighting a war of technology. A lot of images of visuals that you have seen of US aircrafts being targeted, those are infrared visuals, and that is what manpads do. You can eyeball a low-flying aircraft with missiles, and it is very difficult through even if you apply
F-15s with all its flares and chaffs and evasive measures. It just goes on to show that in war anything can happen. So while we've looked at it from the US side, let's take a quick look at from the Iranian side. Iran has managed to hold on to the best of its ability. Of course, top leadership, at least 15 to 16 top leaders, they were eliminated. The human cost has been huge, more than 1,900 killed in this conflict so far, and that's really painful in this part of the conflict. 2 nuclear facilities, they've been targeted repeatedly. Actually, all 3, Isfahan, Fordo and Natanz, repeatedly targeted. Air capabilities down. Their ships have been sunk. So, Geeta, Iran has taken quite a blow.
Well, yes, and it is irreparable damage in the sense if you're talking about short term. In the long term, should the war end, there'll be a lot of recovery that they'll be seeking, which is why the 5 conditions that Iran has put are really important. 1, reparations, war reparations. I do not think that America is going to pay for damages, but just the fact that they're demanding war reparations in itself goes to show that they need that.
Okay.
Oil has been unsanctioned, and just the fact that they're questioning sovereignty on Hormuz.
Okay, I've run out of time on this part of the show, but we will continue to discuss. Do keep in mind, America intends to pursue this war even in the days and weeks ahead. What will that lead to? We'll come back with our assessment on the War Council. Thank you all. A quick break. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.
Character, the taste of success.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Watching India Today.
A very good morning to all our viewers. You're watching India Today. I am Anjali Pandey. Our top focus continues to remain on the West Asia war. We'll get you all the updates, all that has been unfolding in West Asia amid this ongoing war. But before that, let's take a look at the headlines of this hour. Donald Donald Trump confirms missing crew from US F-15E jet shot down by Iran on April 3rd has been recovered by US in Iran following a heavy firefight and a daring rescue operation. Reports say that the rescued crew member has been taken out of Iran. Ahead of the 48 hours ultimatum, Trump releases video of massive strikes on Tehran, says Iran's top military leaders have been eliminated. Trump reminds Iran of his ultimatum, warns that time is running out for Tehran, says if Iran does not make a deal or open the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, all hell will rain down on Iran. Iran says it has not refused negotiations but wants fair terms and a conclusive, lasting end to the conflict. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says Israel struck petrochemical plants after destroying large portion of Iran's steel production capacity. 5 people reportedly killed. Iran warns of hell across region if US and Israel escalation continues. Battleground Kerala heats up. Prime Minister Modi accuses LDF and UDF of repeatedly misleading people. Says LDF and UDF dismissed films such as Kerala Story, Kashmir Files and Dhurandhar as false.
ये झूठ फैलाने का कारोबार लेके बैठे हुए हैं।
Battleground Tamil Nadu heats up. India Today speaks exclusively to DMK MP Kanimori on Vijay factor in polls. Will Vijay emerge as a challenge for MK Stalin is the big question. And at the top of this hour, we're getting some breaking news. US has successfully rescued the second crew member of the downed F-15E jet that was downed by Iran. This happened on April 3rd, and now we'll get you the inside details, the operation in which they were able to get the pilot out the deep inside Iran and back alive. So this operation was carried out on Iranian soil and in fact deep inside Iran, and they managed to get out, to take out the pilot safe and alive. So we get you the inside scoop of the dramatic US crew rescue operations. As per New York Times, hundreds of troops and dozens of aircraft were deployed. US struck Iranian convoys near the rescue zone, and the missing crew member, the second crew member who was missing, the rescue operation and the search operation was on. The missing crew member hid on the ridge and then evaded capture. Remember, Iran was attempting to capture the second crew member who had been missing. Beacon and secure communications guided the rescuers, and the A-10 also gave air cover during the mission. India Today Global's Pranay Padhe is now joining us from Israel with more details on this. Pranay, what does this mission say about the combat search and rescue operations that have been carried out by the United States, successfully rescuing the second crew member as well?
Anjali, if you see the map of Iran, in fact, these fighter jets, F-15E and A-10, met in in a missile attack or by Iran at around Khuzestan area, and in fact, in the Koglu province of Iran, in the city around the city of Dahidasht. In fact, these pilots were they ejected out of those aircrafts, and in fact, one of the pilot who's now been rescued, was around that hilly terrain, and it was a very difficult operation for the United States military to conduct. And because you know that for such search and rescue operations, the aircraft has to fly very low above the ground, and in fact, the risk always remained of another attack on these aircrafts who are on a search and rescue mission. But as far the U.S. military's claims are concerned, as far as President Donald Trump made in a social media post, he also said that the United States military has successfully rescued another pilot. In fact, this aircraft was down on Friday. And in fact, thereafter, U.S. military rescued one pilot, and they were looking for another pilot who was, still, to be located. And in fact, the details coming out from Pentagon clearly indicates that they were around the clock monitoring the kind of communication being sent out by this pilot. And because situation was very difficult and challenging for this pilot, because he has to evade from any capture by the Iranian, either military or the Iranian public. So he evaded that. He sent out those messages, and in fact, the U.S. military could track him, and in fact could rescue him. However, reports are also suggesting, Anjali, that there was a firefight as well, and in fact, due to unconfirmed, because according to unconfirmed reports, there are around 9 deaths as well in the search and rescue operation sustained by the Iranian either military personnel or paramilitary personnel, because they were also on a lookout, and in fact there was apparently some kind of firefight around that area where he was rescued, and he was in a hilly terrain. He saved himself and sent out those messages so that the U.S. military aircraft, sent in big numbers with lethal weapon, as President Donald Trump said, rescued him and brought him back apparently to Kuwait.
All right, Pranay, do stay with us. We're also being joined by retired Air Commodore Prashant Dikshit, who's a defense expert on the broadcast. Air Commodore Dikshit, help us understand, how do you view this successful combat rescue operation of the United States, which comes at a very crucial juncture? And it is also important to note that this is the first ground combat that we're witnessing in this war of the United States and Iran.
I think the first point which I will make, that airspace for the American aircraft not possible to some extent. If you recall, the F-35 time back, they hit another F-30 sometime back, and the F-15 has been knocked down actually. Now, to bring down the aircraft, Iran already has shoulder-fired weapons, exported. These are Russian weapons, and it also has the Torah and the data missile. So, the FS has a problem. Now, about rescue. Although your journal reporter had described area, but that's in proximity about. Now to rescue a pilot is essentially a helicopter operation. Firstly, you have to identify a spot, then you have to down the aircraft, hitting around and sending choppers to build signals. So I think it may be deep in territory, but not very deep, because they had difficulties in identifying the location of the downed pilot. The F-15 has a code too, as you brought up. What is a pilot? And that is a weapons officer. Now, the second weapons officer, I believe, not credible. But they are adding homing devices on their person, their ground, and they have adequate capacity to sustain themselves in any territory. There are food and run provided. All air forces are taking our own. But they are only seeing the troops. I think sending troops is necessary, because there will be opposition from the Iran Revolutionary Guard or their thing, then troops have to engage in a brisk firefighting. But the troops are not Congress. They are sent by chopper, low-flying choppers. That's a risky operation, Anjali. And I think that we should carefully look at the conduct of this war. Now, on the subject, on a similar subject, the Americans designed to the Khargar, and they have down 3,500 Marines. Now, how will the Marines be killed? By choppers? So what I'm trying to bring out that the airspace, Iranian airspace, is not easily available to combat aircraft of the hostile nations, and that is a bit of a risk. I mean, actually, I'm surprised that there can B2B is being aimed at, and the Iranians are using the methodology of heat sinking. So I would try to bring out point that one is the airspace availability, and second is the rescue operation of the pilot. I think the Americans will have to think twice before sending out 15 aircraft. You would recall that the Iranians used to fly F-18s at the time of Pahlavi.
Right.
And they know all of the 15. And they destroyed aircraft in the farm ground as well. So now we sound repetitive in Delhi. The airspace is not easily available, and this rescue operation was a great success. But I would humbly say it not very much into the territory. Thank you.
All right, Air Commodore Prashant Dixit, do stay with us. My colleague Pranay Upadhyay is also with us from the war zone. Is joining us from Israel. Pranay, what do you make out of this rescue operation that comes at a very crucial juncture? We're just hours away from the deadline. This comes amid the ultimatum also. And how rare is it for an operation of this scale to be carried out for just one crew member?
No, definitely it was a question of prestige for US President Donald Trump. I think his instructions were quite clear. That, we have to get our pilot at any cost, and whatever resources required should be sent to the deep inside the Iranian territory. And if you see the location around Daheh-Dasht, because there are reports coming from Daheh-Dasht in Iran that there was apparently some firefight, and there was some gunfight as well while this rescue operation was conducted by the US military in the region. But having said that, there is another interesting claim coming from Tehran. In fact, from Iranian state media is claiming, Anjali, that they have, during this search and rescue operation, they have downed yet another aircraft of US military around the city of Isfahan. So this clearly shows that, this fight is getting intense. But besides that, if you see the larger picture here, that, we are hours away from the deadline set by President Donald Trump. And definitely, he didn't want to take any further action, or he didn't want to go for any negotiation with Iran, some back channel with Iran, with having his pilot captured. And I think that was the reason that he had mounted all the efforts to rescue and retrieve the US pilot, because this F-15 was downed on Friday, and thereafter they rescued one pilot, but another pilot was still an open air. He was not raised and not retrieved. But now we know that US President Donald Trump has also confirmed that they have rescued yet another pilot. So definitely ahead of this, I think ahead of this deadline, or before his deadline expire, I think President Donald Trump is much relieved that his pilot is back to US base. And now, what he said, that the hell will rain if Iran does not comply to the deadline set by him, does not accept the terms and conditions set by him, and to accept either opening of Strait of Hormuz or come to a negotiating table and have some kind of solution or some kind of an agreement with the United States to end this war. But clearly, the messages, the statement coming from Tehran clearly indicate that the Iranian regime, Iranian government is quite unfazed by these deadlines and these rhetorical statements coming from US President Donald Trump. Rather, as I mentioned, that they have made yet another claim that they have downed another US aircraft around the city or around the area of Isfahan while it was on a search and rescue operation. And in fact, they are claiming that this is yet another reminder for the US military that we are observing, and your aircraft, if flying low, they will remain in our striking range, and we will hit back at all possible targets of US interest, US military presence, and Israeli military presence in the region.
Pranay, do stay with us. Let's take a look at the operation, how the US was able to rescue the crew member who was in the F-15E that was downed by Iran on April 3rd. So as per New York Times, hundreds of troops and dozens of aircrafts were deployed by the United States. The US struck Iranian convoys near the rescue zone. And the missing crew, the second crew member, the weapon system officer, hid on the ridge, and that is how he evaded capture. Now, as per New York Times, beacon and secure communications guided the rescuers. That is what helped the rescuers. And A-10 gave air cover during the mission. And the A-10 crashed amid the rescue operations. We're also learning that there was a firefighting also that took place on the ground. This is, remember, the first ground combat operation by the United States in this ongoing war. This rescue operation has taken place on the Iranian soil, deep inside Iran. Air Commodore Prashant Dikshit continues to stay with us. Sir, how do you see if Iran would have been able to capture the crew member as a prisoner of war? What do you think would have happened then, given the current situation, given that we're just hours away from the April 6th deadline and there's constant pressure from Donald Trump on Iran to come to the negotiating table?
Anjali, no country is proved to be captured the military. And if that person is the circulate, then you say lose face in public. And that's why your journalist quota very widely pointed out about the activities of President Trump. And that's how we send out. But I'm telling you, this is definitely a very, very deep incursion. Not so I stand corrected. It's an incursion called use. The A-10 aircraft has been proven in the Vietnam War, and it's withstand out of air fire ground, and they've used toppers definitely, which is coming out. Because ground troops by themselves, when they collect pilots, they cannot come to long ground. So they're carried by hoppers, delivered in the vicinity of the top air group, and they live.
Right.
And in there is a firefighting. That firefighting has to be gone through. The Americans yet not emerged any casualty. I presume would be some.
All
the
right.
Americans not. But the point I'm trying to say, we talked about today, that the Iranians are saying that we know your aircraft. As I told you a little while ago, the Iranians have low firing reference to air weapons known as
All right, Air Commodore Prashant Dikshit, that's all the time we have on this bulletin. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast on this very important development that the US has been successful in rescuing the second crew member of the F-15E that was downed in Iran on April 3rd. In fact, India Today exclusively spoke with West Asia expert Dr. Wael Awad and retired Colonel of US Air Force Jeffrey Fisher over the dramatic rescue operation. Listen in to this exclusive conversation. Mr. Fisher, how do you look at this big development that is being reported? The US has been successful in carrying out the rescue operation of the second crew member of the F-15E jet that was downed in Iran on April 3rd. What does this say about the combat operations and the rescue operations by the United States?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, and good morning here from from Vienna. I think the first thing it says is there's going to be a lot of people in the United States that are going to wake up and feel like their prayers were answered for Easter Sunday, which is really, really great. But it also, I think this speaks to, from the reports that I'm seeing, this speaks to a highly well-planned, sophisticated combat search and rescue, along with special operations teams working together in a coordinated and concerted fashion to go in and rescue this this downed air crew member. He did all of his, from everything we're seeing, he did all of his training correctly, right? So when you do your combat search and rescue training as an air crew member, like all the things you're supposed to do, and I think back to when I did that years ago, it seems like he did everything right. And then just kind of hunkered down and waited. stayed out of the eyes of the enemy, and waited for the team to come in, and it went off without a hitch. I know that there's been some excessive fighting that was going on in Iran. That's also being reported, and the fact, and at this time they're not reporting any casualties, and they recovered every single person out of there, is somewhat phenomenal.
Right. And how significant do you think it would have been for Iran if Iran would have been successful in tracing the second crew member and capturing him as a prisoner of war?
Yeah, your question's spot on, right? Because this was going to be a bargaining chip for Iran. If Iran was able to recover this downed aircrew member, it gives them a upper hand at the negotiation table, or at least a negotiating chip in a table that's covered with many different chips. I wouldn't say it would be the end all be all, and it would be something that would force the United States to relent in some form or fashion, but it definitely would be an important one, right?
Right, and how do you think the U.S. would have been able to locate and trace the second crew member? How was he able to send any detail about his location to the CIA?
Yeah, well, I'm only hearing bits and pieces at this point, but I will tell you what I've learned, which we always be very cautious of first reports. So I'll put that caveat out there, right? Is that when he landed, he found high ground. He turned on his beacon. So every aircrew member has a unique beacon that they fly with in their ejection seat or in their survival gear. And once he knew that he was safe and that he could turn his beacon on, he got to a place. That beacon would be collected as information from U.S. intelligence assets and from other aircraft, and it would start what we would call direction finding or fixing on his location. So he doesn't even have to talk anymore. This is a discrete beacon. He can say, hey, obviously he's alive because he turned on the beacon. And so everyone kind of knew at that point, he was okay. Probably communicated and said, hey, look, I've got a good hold-up position. There's no need for you to come get me right now because it would be very dangerous. Everyone's looking. He sought shelter. He secured his location. And this does a couple things, right? The first thing it does is it gives the U.S. combat search and rescue teams time to mission plan, right? So
and let us now understand the U.S. most complex rescue mission. It has successfully rescued the second crew member of the F-15E jet. It was a massive search deployment. Hundreds of special forces and troops were mobilized by the United States. Dozens of aircraft and helicopters were deployed in this mission. Now, let's also take a look at the air power that backed this rescue operation. So the U.S. jets hit the Iranian convoys. The objective was to prevent the Revolutionary Guard Corps troops from reaching the pilot and the crew member. Now, the pilot's survival tactics, he hiked away to elevated ridge and then hid after the crash, and he used distress beacon and secure communications to guide the rescuer. So that is how they came to know about his details. That is what helped him greatly, and also the forces. Now, crucial air cover. The A-10 Warthog jets supported the entire rescue mission. There were dozens of Revolutionary Guard Corps and the besieged members who were killed in this rescue operation. That is an important point to note. The pilot got local assistance as well. The F-15 jet crashed in anti-Iranian regime region. That's also an important point to note. And in fact, what we're also learning is that the pilot may have relied on the locals for shelter. So even the locals helped the pilot in this rescue operation, because the jet had crashed in an anti-Iranian regime region. And there was a final twist in the plot. Now, there were 2 C-130s deployed for exfiltration that got stuck at the Iranian base, and the U.S. then flew in 3 new planes to extract all personnel. And the U.S. blew up the 2 disabled planes to prevent Iranian use. And that is how the most complex rescue mission was carried out by the United States. It is also important to note that this is the first ground combat operation that we're witnessing in this ongoing war. With that, it's a wrap on this bulletin. Thank you for watching India Today. More news and updates on the ongoing West Asia war will continue on the other side. Keep watching India Today.
You are watching India Today. Director, The Taste of Success.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. Make your media plan smarter. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. struck
India fought a war within. That exacted a dismaying toll. It is a war that India needed to win desperately. It is a war to rebuild India and its heartland. Nurture its arid, red, dry forest land into a new, better tomorrow. Where people don't believe in guns to fight against poverty and discrimination. Instead, they become part of development and implement it on ground. This could turn the red corridor of India into green. That was the promise.
मैं उन हर माता को आश्वासन देता हूं कि आपके बच्चों की जिंदगी बर्बाद न हो, वो बंदूकें लेकर जंगलों में भटकने की आदी न बन जाए, इसलिए मैं आपके बच्चों की रक्षा के लिए हर मां को वादा करता हूं, मैं माओवाद नक्सलवाद को जड़ों से उखाड़ पर के रखूंगा।
India worked relentlessly. Step by step, the lost territories of the hinterland to the red corridors were remapped. People outreach and persuasion made many give up the path of red extremism. Those who stood stubbornly in the path were eliminated because there was a deadline to honor.
31/3/2026 को पूरे देश से नक्सलवाद को हम समाप्त कर देंगे, समाप्त।
It was a slow but steady campaign. And it is an ongoing campaign to ensure that India has no extreme Naxalism left.
पोलिट ब्यूरो मेंबर और सीएमसी ये पूरा समाप्त हो चुका है और हमने लक्ष्य किया था कि 31 मार्च को नक्सल मुक्त करेंगे। मैं पूरी व्यवस्था होने के बाद देश को भी सूचित करूंगा, मगर मैं ऐसा बोल सकता हूं, धड़ल्ले से बोल सकता हूं कि हम नक्सल मुक्त हो गए हैं, ऐसा कहने में कोई तकलीफ नहीं।
Politics demands a definite answer. But development, cure to the problem, needs sustained work to ensure India has. No red corridor. Papa Rao is believed to be in his late 50s. The school dropout joined the Naxal movement in late 90s. Rising through the ranks, he became the leader of the South Subzonal Group in the People's Liberation Guerrilla Army, or PLGA. A week before India's deadline to end Naxalism, Papa Rao, with a reward of rupees 25 lakhs on his head, surrendered with 17 cadres.
माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी और माननीय गृह मंत्री जी की दृढ़ इच्छा शक्ति और उनका संकल्प और 31 मार्च इसी महीने पूरे देश से नक्सलवाद को समाप्त करना है, तो समय नजदीक है, तो समय रहते पापा राव सरेंडर किया है, तो अच्छी बात है।
Nearly 600 kilometers from Jagdalpur, where senior Naxal leader Papa Rao surrendered, another of his comrades, 19-year-old Mogdi Honhaga, gave up arms on 30th March in Odisha's Rourkela. A Her journey in red extremism ended nearly 140 kilometers from her home in Jharkhand's Shinghum district. 140 surrendered Naxalites were brought to the Chhattisgarh Legislative Assembly to observe the local Temple of Democracy 10 days before the government's deadline to end red terror from the country was to approach.
Flurry of activities in late March of Naxal leaders and its cadres surrounding across Chhattisgarh and its neighboring states. These areas in Chhattisgarh, Telangana, Odisha and Maharashtra were once part of the dreaded corridor. Worst was Chhattisgarh. Sukma Bastar became the synonymous with red terror, and there has been a steady effort in the last decade to eliminate Naxalism in these areas, which not only meant to bring people from the red clutches to the green corridor of the mainstream, but it also meant effective rehabilitation programs, taking infrastructure to the remotest of the corners, and rural development.
Nearly 5 hours drive away from the Chhattisgarh capital of Raipur, Abujmad has been a distant but prominent red dot of terror in the administration's radar. For decades, the name Abujmad, meaning the unknown hill in local parlance, evoked the image of a dark, impenetrable fortress of Naxalism. Maps ended here, development stalled here, fear lived here.
ये अबूझमाड़ का एक ऐसा गांव है जो रिसेंटली ही नक्सल मुक्त हुआ है और यहाँ पर हम अभी नारायणपुर से कुछ 30 किलोमीटर की दूरी पर अबूझमाड़ शुरू हुआ और अबूझमाड़ के जो घने जंगल हैं हम उन घने जंगलों के 25 किलोमीटर अंदर हैं और हम ये देखना चाहते हैं कि जब ये अनाउंसमेंट अमित शाह जी ने कर दिया है कि भाई नक्सल मुक्त भारत हो चुका है तो इन गांवों में क्या माहौल है और इससे अच्छा जो टेस्ट है वो नहीं हो सकता था क्योंकि अबूझमाड़ ऐसी जगह है जहां से ये एग्जैक्टली वेरीफाई हो सकता है कि नक्सलवाद कितना खत्म हुआ है और कितना नहीं।
At Iraq Bhati, 25 kilometers inside the core zone, the first thing that one notices isn't the weapons, like it once used to be. Today, it's the construction. People are building for a future they finally believe they have. Away from fear, away from guns.
गांव किस तरह से बदल रहा है? पहले क्या था? बहुत डर में रहते थे?
जी, पहले बहुत डर था मैम।
कैसे डर था? ये लोग कभी भी आ जाते थे नक्सली लोग?
जी।
क्या मांगने आते थे?
चावल वगैरह देते थे।
चावल रोज मांगने आते थे?
जी।
और नहीं देते थे तो?
मारते थे मैम।
लेकिन गांव बहुत बदल गया है।
जी, अभी बदल गया है।
बदल गया है। आपको उम्मीद है और बदलेगा अब क्योंकि कैंप बन गया है तो सब बदलते जाएगा धीरे धीरे?
जी।
पहले तो मारते हैं, काटते हैं, पूरा मीटिंग करते हैं, नक्सली मन पूरा गांव वाला को जमा करके पूरा करते हैं। अभी तो गांव में कैंप बैठे तो हर गांव बदल गया मैडम।
Change doesn't come easy. Even with the roads, the language remains a wall. Ganga, a teacher's wife, initially claimed she did not know Hindi, preferring to stick to the local Madhya dialect, still trapped in the rule of red terror. It took a local from neighboring Orcha to bridge the gap, and the real talk started.
2020 से अभी यहाँ सब कुछ विकास होने का काम आ रहा है। सरकार जो पहले से कोशिश कर रहा था करने के लिए और अभी इधर जो माहौल थोड़ा सा ठीक ठाक नहीं था, अलग चल रहा था। उसके बाद अभी मोहल्ला अभी खुल गया है। अब प्रशासन भी पहुंच रहा है, कलेक्टर मैडम भी पहुंच रहा है, सीओ साहब लोग भी आ रहे हैं।
पहला पैदल जाते थे।
हाँ।
ऐसी
सड़क नहीं था।
सड़क भी नहीं था।
हाँ।
पगडंडे रास्ता था।
हाँ।
अभी है।
हाँ।
अभी ट्रैक्टर वगैरह अभी 1-2 टन है।
हाँ। बस भी चलता है
जी।
अच्छा, तो यहाँ से पहले तो बहुत मुश्किल से जाते थे, अभी बस आने लग गया अंदर।
जी।
Even a year ago, the Naxals strictly forbade locals from going to schools run by local administration. But the chorus from boycott has changed to rhythms of education.
और बाद की संख्या हम लोग 42 लिखा हुआ था पहले से, ठीक है? उससे पहले क्या खाली था ना, खाली स्थान था, वहाँ पे हम लोग क्या लिखे? 41।
कितने बच्चे हैं यहाँ पर?
6 बच्चे दर्ज हैं मैम।
6 बच्चे दर्ज।
जी जी जी।
किस तरह से पढ़ते हैं? इन्हें पढ़ाने में थोड़ा समय लगता है या क्या?
लगता था पहले मैम, अभी तो कर लेते हैं।
आप कितने सब्जेक्ट्स पढ़ाती हैं?
जो भी है, मतलब हिंदी है हमारे यहाँ, फिर इंग्लिश है, फिर गणित है, सारा पढ़ाते हैं।
यहाँ पे मिड डे मील भी बच्चों को दिया जाता है? क्या दिया जाता है मिड डे मील में?
वो जो है मैम,
पोहा।
जी, पोहा दिया जाता है, सूजी, दलिया जी।
For centuries, these people have trusted herbs and roots of the forest to heal them. Even in the 21st century, modern medicine was unknown to them. Clinics are operating to help the tribals and villagers of the area.
आप लोग ये कैसे मैसेज पहुंचा रहे हैं कि यहाँ पे अब सुविधा आ गई है तो आइए?
जैसे कि किसी को बुखार आ गया तो मलेरिया टेस्ट के लिए बहुत ज़्यादा आते हैं। क्या, और जैसे खुजली खांस हो गया तो उसके लिए भी दवाइयाँ देने के लिए आ जाते हैं, और बुखार ऐसे नॉर्मली। इससे बहुत लोगों को अवेयरनेस पहुंचा है कि अगर हम वहाँ पे जाते हैं तो दवाइयाँ देते हैं तो लोग बताते हैं कि हम जो दवाई खाए हैं उससे ठीक हो रहा है।
This particular tale of development is incredible how it has happened. It is not restricted to just papers, but it has translated on the ground. Mobile towers are here. People know Prime Minister Narendra Modi. People also know their chief minister, their tribal chief minister Vishnu Dev Sai. They also know the 2 deputy chief ministers. People who are carrying out the development, they very well know about these people. They have social media, they have mobile connectivity, they have police camps, they have roads, they have PSC centers, and now they also have these schools to educate them and to prepare them for future.
The era of being known only for conflict is over. This is no more an unknown hill. The red terror shadows have retreated and the sun is finally out in Abjud Mad. It all began in 1967 in Naxalbari, West Bengal. A violent peasant uprising led by Charu Majumdar sparked an armed rebellion against the Indian state. What began as a local revolt of tribals and tea garden workers soon spread across India's tribal belt. From Bihar to Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand to Andhra Pradesh. Naxalism turned into a big internal security threat with the formation of CPI Maoists after the merger of Naxal outfits in 2004. Nearly 180 districts under the shadow of what came to be known as the Red Corridor. The country witnessed some of the deadliest attacks. An assassination attempt on N. Chandrababu Naidu in 2003. The killing of MP Sunil Mahato in 2007. The 2010 Dantewara massacre, in which 76 CRPF Jawans were killed. The UPA government of the time acknowledged the scale of the crisis.
And I would urge you to make good use of this opportunity to come up with some concrete measures to deal with the very grave threat of Naxalism. I must point out here that the challenge of Naxalism has received our serious attention for quite some time now.
Years later, BJP government set a clear deadline to make India completely Naxal-free by March 31st, 2026. With a zero-tolerance policy, the push against left-wing extremism has entered its final phase. And slowly, the Red Terror began to collapse. As per ORF research, Naxalism in India at its peak in mid-2000s had a dominating presence in over 200 districts of the country. But that has reduced significantly in the past 2 decades. In 2013, 126 districts from different states reported Naxal-related violence, but by March 2025, this tally had fallen to just 18 districts. By November, that number was reportedly reduced to 11 districts. Incidents of violence by left-wing extremism, which reached its highest level of 1,936 in 2010, have reduced to 374 in 2024. That is a reduction of 81%. The total number of deaths of both civilians and security forces has also reduced by 85% during this period, from 1,005 deaths in 2010 to 150 in 2024. In a quiet corner of Bhanu Pratappur, tucked deep within the silence of the Kanker forest, a transformation is taking place. 168 kilometers away from Raipur, initially this facility wasn't built for art. It was built for ambush. Not long ago, these walls wore the olive drab and charcoal grey of a high-security BSF camp. It was a frontline fortress in a decades-long war. In Bhanu Pratappur, 45 men and women are undergoing a government-mandated rewiring. Saradu Narethi used to be the tailor of the revolution. She used to stitch the 10-compartment bags that carried everything from medical kits to ammunition for the foot soldiers of Red Terror.
मैं आने वाले भविष्य के लिए अच्छी सीलूंगी करके सोचती हूँ। मैं भी सिखाऊंगी करके सोचती हूँ।
सरकार अच्छे से कर रही है काम अपना कि थोड़ा और अच्छे से कर सकती है?
अभी तो करती है अच्छे से।
किस तरीके से और अच्छे से हुआ जा सकता है काम?
इस सिलाई सीखते हैं, वही सब पैर सीखने के बाद मशीन भी देने से अच्छा था।
35-year-old Kuwar Singh was known as Jugnu, the Firefly. For nearly 20 years, he was a doctor without a degree, performing field surgeries on bullet wounds without any formal education. He learned from books on his own, and the rest was filled up with experience on the field.
क्या-क्या करते थे? सारी सर्जरी?
गोली किसी को लगने से सर्जरी करके निकालना, और गोली लगने के वजह से जख्म हुआ गया है उसे स्टिचिंग करना। जनता को सेवा करना है तो डॉक्टर ध्यानपूर्वक और दृढ़ता के साथ, हिम्मत के साथ करना है करके मुझे पहले से बताए थे।
शिल्पकारिता अभी आपने इतनी अच्छी सीख ली, इतना बारीक काम आपने इतने अच्छे से कर लिया, उसके बावजूद आपको कहीं ना कहीं डॉक्टर बनने की ही इच्छा है?
जी, मैं कहीं ना कहीं मेरे को डॉक्टर बनने से ही अच्छा है करके मैं सोच रहा हूँ।
At 21, Sukhdu Ram Padda had already lived a lifetime. He was a gunman for a top commando, tasked with the most delicate mission. recruitment.
जब आप गांव में भी जाते थे, मीटिंग करने के लिए जाते थे, तो क्या बोलते थे गांव वालों को कि क्या उन लोगों को क्यों शामिल होना चाहिए?
उन लोगों को शामिल होना बोलने से तो वहाँ मीटिंग करते थे हम लोग, वहाँ जाके भी हम लोग मतलब ये जल जंगल ज़मीन बचाना है तो हम लोग का अधिकार आना है, तो ऐसे संगठन में आना है और गांव में रह के भी संगठन काम करना है। ज़बरदस्ती नहीं करते थे मैडम, किसका मन आएगा उसी को लाते थे हम लोग।
ये किताब जो आप पढ़ रहे हो, समाज का अध्ययन, इससे पढ़ के क्या सीखे हो?
यहाँ सीखे हैं हम लोग, गणित सीखे हैं और इंग्लिश और हिंदी विषय भी सीखे हैं बहुत।
The afternoon shifts are long. The air is thick with wood, dust, and the hum of sewing machines. But for these 45 men and women, it's a race against time to prove they are ready for the world beyond guns and bullets.
The central government's policy calls this place right behind me a rehab center. But when you talk to the people here, you realize it is much deeper than that. It is about sensory replacement. When you have spent more than a decade of your life reacting with a gun on a snap of a twig, suddenly the silence of this place is terrifying. Every stitch that she makes and every stroke that he makes with his mallet is a way to unlearn the muscle memory of a guerrilla fighter. What they are trying to reclaim here is a brain that was once trained enough to destroy the rest of their lives.
From the gunfire of Naxalbari to the last remaining pockets of resistance, this is the end of a long and violent chapter. An insurgency that once challenged the Indian state, now reduced to its final shadows.
Hi, I'm Sana. Here's your weather update. Delhi maximum 31 and minimum 20 degrees. Mumbai maximum 28 and minimum 26 degrees. Kolkata maximum 37 and minimum 26 degrees. Bengaluru maximum 32 and minimum 24 degrees. Chennai maximum 32 and minimum 27 degrees. Hyderabad maximum 35 and minimum 25 degrees.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
You are watching India Today.
Very good afternoon, viewers. You're watching India Today with me, Sriya Kundu, and we will be taking you through all the top stories coming in from that war theatre that continues to rage on in West Asia. And our focus will also be on all other stories developing at the top of this afternoon. But before all of that, let's quickly take you through the headlines doing the rounds first. It's US's first ever ground operation in Iran, and Trump has confirmed that missing crew from the US F-15E jet shot down by Iran on April 3rd and has been recovered now by the US in Iran following a heavy firefight and a daring rescue operation. Reports say that the rescued crew member has been taken out of Iran. Ahead of the 48 hours ultimatum, Trump releases videos of massive strikes on Tehran, says Iran's top military leaders have all been eliminated. Trump reminds Iran of his ultimatum, warns that time is running out for Tehran, says if Iran does not make a deal or open the Strait of Hormuz within the next 48 hours, all hell will rain down on Iran. Iran says it has not refused negotiations but wants fair terms and a conclusive, lasting end to this conflict. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says Israel struck petrochemical plants after destroying large portion of Iran's steel production capacity. 5 people reported killed. Iran warns of hell across the region if the US and Israel escalation continues. Battleground Kerala heats up. This is with your focus to the domestic arena now. Prime Minister Modi accuses LDF and the UDF of repeatedly misleading people. Says the LDF and UDF dismissed films such as Kerala Files, Kashmir Files and Dhurandhar as false. Battleground Tamil Nadu heats up. India Today speaks exclusively to DMK MP Kanimodi on Vijay factor in the polls. Will Vijay then emerge as a challenge to MK Stalin? Now viewers, we are taking you back to that war theatre, and when we speak of the war theatre, it's a dramatic rescue operation, the first in terms of a ground combat that's been reported now, wherein that crew member who went missing on April 3rd after the F-15E jet was downed has finally been rescued and brought out of Iran by the US military forces. Now, we've been talking about the details. Here is a visual that's been released by the Israeli side now, which shows you that beacon of light. Remember, that is the one that's been spoken about across reports by the US media, that is exactly how the particular crew member who is stuck on the ground after having ejected midair, in fact, sent out signals to the Air Force members who were already out there searching for him. So this could be that very firefight that rescued the US crew. Israeli media video shows the gunfight between the US and Iran that took place to give cover so that the extraction is successful. Many Iranians were killed in the operation. Initial numbers were somewhere at around 4. The projectile crashes on the ground and loud explosions are heard at the same time in this very visual that's in fact been released by Israeli media. With that, let me take you across to Pranay Upadhyay, who's joining us on the broadcast with more details on this. Pranay, a very good afternoon to you. You know, when the first visuals or details came out of this entire combat that's taken place, I'm sorry to make this reference, but this is nothing less of what we've seen in movies probably. It takes us back to probably a Tarantino movie for that matter. That's exactly what the visual shows on our screen that the Israeli media has come out to reveal. It's a beacon of light you can see in the darkness, and that's what was in fact used by that person who was missing, by the colonel who was missing, to guide those troops to him in that very terrain. Take us through what you are understanding from this very visual, please.
A very tedious, a very challenging, a very difficult 30-hour search operation has culminated into a big success for the US military and for President Donald Trump. I'm sure he must have taken a sigh of relief after this rescue operation, because you can very well imagine how difficult it was. It was deep inside Iranian territory. It was a mountainous terrain. The pilot has to to secure himself, keep himself in a location where he can correspond, he can send out messages to the rescue parties, and also could safeguard his life as well, because there were search parties, including this Iranian civilians, were on a lookout for that missing pilot. In fact, he was a weapon officer of F-15 aircraft, which was downed on Friday. And in fact, the reports coming from Iran indicates that around the city of Dahedasht and in fact around the province of Koyglu and Badr Ahmed and all these areas where this pilot was, I'm sure he must have ejected, and after that he rescued himself. He went to atop a hill, and thereafter he ensured that he remained safe and he could send out messages. He can correspond. He could send out those SOS messages to the rescue parties. But it took around 30 hours of that search and rescue mission, because the Iranian missiles were being fired from the territory. In fact, if you see the complexity of this operation, that the American forces have to ensure a sphere of a secure zone. We do not know as yet that to rescue that missing pilot, whether there was special forces went down to the Iranian territory and extracted him, or whether he could climb through some kind of a ladder and get aboard that helicopter which went down to secure him, to rescue him. And in fact, we have seen those visuals, Shreya, that the American helicopters were flying low in order to search for that missing pilot. And those helicopters were also being fired, especially the Jolly Green helicopters, which were being fired upon by the Iranians, those who bystanders and Iranians, those who were there on a lookout for this missing pilot. So clearly, those 30 hours must have been a very, very tense 30 hours for the American military, but they have successfully extracted their missing pilot. And now both the pilots are accounted for as far as the CENTCOM is concerned, Central Command is concerned. And but amid all these things, there is another interesting claim which has come from Tehran, Shreya, that the Iranian authorities are now claiming, especially the IRGC has put out a statement. They have claimed that they have downed yet another American aircraft around the area of Isfahan. So far, there is no confirmation from American Central Command or American US military that they have lost another aircraft, but the Iranians are claiming that they have downed yet another aircraft, and US might be again in the similar situation.
Pranay, yes, thank you for taking us through those details. Do stay with us. Let me just take our viewers a little more in detail with the news that you just brought to us. We are also picking up on that here in the newsroom itself. This is news that's coming in, wherein Iran has come out to claim another US fighter jet downed, with US jet being hit during the rescue operations itself. US jet has been downed in Isfahan. That is the region that's been quoted by the Iranian media at this point of time, where Iran is claiming they have downed another US fighter aircraft during their search and rescue operation over Isfahan. This is the latest that we're bringing to you, Pranay. Coming back to you on this particular update we are getting, as you were also mentioning about it, what we are now slowly looking at is such reports coming in from the Iranian side of downing these US jets, and that indeed brings about the problem, and that's what we were also discussing earlier yesterday, that is, that if there are troops or if there are crew members who end up falling onto the ground within the Iranian territory while ejecting, if these aircrafts are constantly being, downed by the Iranian side, then we see the problem of a prisoner of war coming into the angle, and that becomes a very tricky situation for the United States as well. And that's why the fact that this crew member has in fact been recovered from the Iranian territory itself came in as a big boost to the US side. I want you to throw some light on this fact that where does US stand at this point of time in terms of military might as well, when we see so many jets being downed by the Iranian side one after the other?
It's a conflict, it's a war, it's a battle, Shreya, and we know that during these, the ongoing conflict, there are instances, there are incidents where the Iranians have also not only claimed, but they have managed to hit at some of the American aircraft, especially on Friday. They claimed, and which turned out to be true, that they have shot down one A-10 aircraft, which is a closed air support aircraft. Besides that, they have also downed one F-15E fighter jet. One of the missing pilot who was rescued today was part of the crew of that F-15 fighter jet. And in fact, both the pilots have ejected from that aircraft on Friday. One pilot was rescued, early, and thereafter the American forces were on the lookout for another pilot, and now they have managed to secure that pilot as well. But if you see this is yet another achievement, you can call it, that Iranians, despite sustaining so much of damages, so many hits at their arms and ammunition depots, their missile silos, they're still able to hit back at American aircrafts, and their air defenses are still up, and they are working. So clearly, this is absolutely in contradiction to what Americans are claiming, that they have completely destroyed the air defense systems of United States. But having said that, the Iranians have targeted many American bases in the region. Around 19 air bases have come in, have been targeted by the Iranian forces. And in fact, at many bases, there were reports. In fact, during the initial days of this conflict, we have seen those reports of, F-15s going down, 3 of the American F-15s going down in Kuwait, though it was a friendly fire by the Kuwaiti air defense system. But, this is the fog of war. This is how it happened in a conflict, that, howsoever mighty any military is, but as the American Chief of Staff said, that it's an evolving situation. We have also evolved, we are also evolving, and they are also evolving. So these are evolving tactics. But the very fact that the Iranians are able to hit back at American aircrafts, and we have seen those visuals, that the search parties and those aircraft, especially the helicopters flying low in order to search for this missing pilot, they were being fired upon by people on the ground, the IRGC troops on the ground, and this clearly shows that the risk of losing aircraft, the risk of losing manpower always remain in a conflict, even for the mightiest military of United States.
Very true, Pranay, and that's a fact that we have been going back and forth for some time now, whether whose military might at this given point might actually get exhausted, because both sides are claiming that they are mightier than the other. And that's what we usually see in a war situation. But that also brings about the question as to when will this war then end. Pranay, stay with us. Let me just take our viewers through this information that we will take you to show what kind of military might the United States has and what all has been targeted by the Iran so far, and they've successfully been able to damage it. Number one, this is US's losses that are now mounting, viewers. Number one is an F-35 fighter jet that's come out to be damaged. 4 F-15E Strike Eagle have already been downed, and that is the rescue operation that we've been talking about since morning today. It is with regards to one of these F-15Es that were downed on April 3rd itself. Next is an A-10 Thunderbolt II. This is also popularly known as a Warthog, and this has also been downed. However, the pilot who had ejected from there was already rescued earlier itself in the process of extraction again. Now, 8 KC-135 tankers have been damaged, and also some of them have been completely destroyed. So that is the number of KC-135 tankers that we're speaking of. And then we have 17 MQ-9 Reaper drones that have been shot down by the Iranian side. One UH-60 Black Hawk has also been damaged, which was involved in the rescue operation looking for this very particular person, the colonel, the missing colonel from that F-15E who was stuck in the Iranian territory, who was lost in fact in the Iranian territory. This Black Hawk was involved in that search operation, and that was hit by the Iranian side during that time itself. 2 of the HH-60G Pave Hawk have also been damaged, and 1 CH-47 Chinook has been destroyed, the photograph of which we brought to you earlier on India Today itself. But yes, this is the amount of losses that the United States has incurred so far in terms of advanced military equipment, especially when we're speaking of their air power. Let me take this back to Pranay at this point. Pranay, US losses mounting. We have a deadline coming up at this point as well, where they've said that the attacks will only mount from here. In fact, to quote Donald Trump, he said he's going to rain fire and hell over Iran. But at the same time, this question still remains, and that's what you were also, throwing insight upon, that how long can this war be sustained? We already see a ground combat having taken place at a time when the US is already mulling over sending ground troops. So there's just escalations at sight at this point.
But Shreya, looking at these number of platforms or U.S. Military platforms loss, don't you see it as a karma's reminder to those who were claiming and making all sorts of statement about India losing its aircraft during Operation Sindhu?
It is definitely ironic. Yes.
Yeah. So clearly, this remains the reality of any military conflict, any battlefield, and whosoever whatever claims people make, and whatsoever might be the military might of any country for that matter, but in any conflict, this remains the dynamic of any conflict or any war zone, that even the mightiest military tend to suffer losses, and these mounting figures of the US military losses are raising serious question in Washington DC as well, at the Capitol Hill as well, and that's why people are asking that how long US would want to sustain this conflict and how many losses we want to sustain. But having said that, the dynamics of the conflict is that it is still on, and in fact, President Donald Trump has indicated that the American military might is of the strength that they could extract their fighter pilots from the enemy territory, deep inside the enemy territory. We do not know as yet, Shreya, that for this operation, whether US military sent out some special forces to extract this pilot, then, because if it is so, then this would be considered as US's first boot on ground operation to extract its military, its fighter pilot from the enemy territory. But even if the pilot managed to get aboard that helicopter, which was sent to rescue this pilot, then also it is a very difficult and a challenging operation because the American military had to secure that entire zone where they were conducting this extraction operation. They had to manage that, the no firepower is targeted at those helicopters, those choppers, and those forces, those who are there out there to rescue that pilot. And they had to fire at different locations. So there were heavy firing, and there were reports about heavy military strikes around the Dahedash area. The city around which this operation was believed to be conducted by the U.S. military. But, this remains a very different and a very challenging dynamic for the U.S. military also, because at a time when U.S. President Donald Trump is saying that, hell will rain if his deadline is not met by the Iranian authorities, if Iran does not come to table and accept his terms and conditions, then there will be more firepower directed to Iran.
Very true, very true. And Pranay, here is where there's an important report that's come in, or at least we're picking up on this very news from US media reports itself. Pranay, I'll come to you with this question. Just let me take our viewers through what we are learning. This is CIA used deception campaign is what we are understanding in Iran before daring US rescue mission. That is what we are learning now. CIA had floated pilot spotted theory. CIA managed to confuse the Iranians. Forces used time to grab the crew, and then the US pilot rescue mission took place. So, Pranay, these visuals we are showing on our screens right now, that beacon of light. So just to explain it to our viewers, what we're understanding from this very report is that there's a deception campaign theory that was used, wherein the beacon of light that we're seeing in this visual probably was used to deceive the Iranian side, to distract them to one side while they were actually taking out the crew member from another direction. That's probably what the CIA has done. That's what the US media reports are saying. With each passing detail, Pranay, as much as I have goosebumps while I'm talking about this, and I'm sure you have been citing all of this right there in Tel Aviv, I want you to throw some more light on this deception campaign that we're speaking of that has been used by the CIA as a tactic.
Yeah, all tools will be at the disposal of U.S. military, U.S. Department of War, CIA to extract that missing pilot. And I'm sure they must have deployed all sorts of tools, be it electronic tools or electronic warfare apparatus or the deception tactics and tools, because this was a very crucial operation. This would have changed the dynamic because, United States and Iran share a very troubled history of hostage crisis or POW crisis. We know that 47 years ago, the Iranian revolutionaries have held hostage the U.S. embassy staff, and how that shaped the dynamics of U.S.-Iran relations, that even after 47 years, U.S. President Donald Trump, White House keep reminding about that difficult moment for the U.S. Memory and for the U.S. history. And therefore, President Donald Trump probably, his direction must have been very clear to the U.S. military that I want my pilots to be back on American soil at any cost. So deploy whatever you have at your disposal and use whatever you can. But I want my men alive, and we have to ensure if the pilot has sent out a message or an SOS that he's alive and he's trying to evade, he's trying to keep himself secure, but the time window is closing fast. And therefore, they have mounted, massive operation, manhunt operation, rescue operation, and, they have managed to retrieve. You rightly said that, this is the perfect Hollywood movie script. But certainly, this happens. This happened on the real time. This happened on ground, and in fact, managing to extract a pilot from an hostile enemy territory, that to be deep inside, as far as Dahedash area, which is in the Koheglu province of Iran, and in fact, this is quite far from the Kazakhstan province where these fighters were downed. So we know that around that area, which is closer to the Iraq and Kuwait borders of Iran, these fighters were targeted, both A-10 and F-15E. But one of the pilots of the A-10 managed to land or managed to eject from the A-10, and in fact he landed in the territory of Kuwait, in the Kuwaiti airspace. but the F-15 were down, and both the pilots are now being accounted for. They have both been rescued by an interval of, say, about like 30 hours. But this remains a very challenging operation, and this also remains a challenge for the U.S. military. The way they are conducting these military strikes over Iran, this remains a challenge because F-15E especially, these are the old aircrafts. Like its vintage is around 1972, and in fact, it is believed that they are soon to be phased out by the U.S. military, but they are still in use. They are, the Strike Eagles are still being operated by the U.S. military and being deployed in this operation.
Right, Pranay, thank you for, in fact, bringing us all that clarity and putting everything into perspective at this point. We'll keep coming back to you through the day to understand more updates as they pour in. But for now, viewers, let me quickly take you through the inside details of what is now being called US's most complex rescue mission. And there is a reason why it's being called so. Just take a look at the details that have come in, which will sort of paint a picture of what exactly went down in those 30 hours within which this particular crew member was in fact recovered from there. So there was a massive search deployment that was put out there. Hundreds of special forces troops were mobilized and dozens of aircraft and helicopters were deployed, some of which were being downed by the Iranian side during the rescue operation itself. And remember, at this time, both sides are looking for this very crew member. The Iranian side had even put a bounty on this particular person's head that whoever finds him, that person shall be given a hefty sum. Now, next up, what we see in this process is the air power backed the rescue operation. That is what helped majorly while troops were deployed on the ground, but the major cover that was provided during the extraction was from the US air power. US jets hit the Iranian convoys that were constantly trying to infiltrate into this rescue operation. The objective at the end of the day was to prevent the IRGC troops from reaching the pilot first. Now, the pilot's survival tactics is also equally interesting here, and interesting is probably the wrong term. One would even say daring at this point of time, because imagine he's in enemy territory being hunted down, and those are the crucial hours he has to guide his forces back to him so that he can be rescued. So he hiked away to an elevated ridge, hid after the crash, used a distress beacon, that's a torchlight that was being shot out by him, to secure the communications and to guide the rescuers to him. And as we spoke about the crucial air cover already, let's take you through what were the jets being used. There was the Warthog, that is the A-10 jets that were supporting the rescue mission. There were dozens of IRGC and Basij members who've been killed by the air power being used as well. Then the pilot got local assistance. This is very crucial, what we're learning of. The F-15 jet that crashed in the anti-Iranian regime region. This might have actually indeed come out to help this particular pilot, because while there was a bounty, while the Iranian regime was looking for this pilot, it was a matter of luck as well that this particular person, the crew member, the colonel who had dropped into this very region, was an anti-current Iranian regime, which is why they actually helped him out. The pilot may have relied on the locals for shelter as well, from what we can understand so far. And there's a final twist in the plot. There were 2 C-130s that were deployed for the exfiltration, got stuck at the Iranian base. US then flew in through new planes to extract all personnel, and then they were brought out. And the final twist is what happened, wherein the US blew up the 2 disabled planes to prevent it from Iranian use as well, so that could not have, there's no recovery that can be made from that very jet anymore. And they completely destroyed it and left it on the enemy territory. The rubble and the remnants of that were left behind. Next up, let's also tell you how US rescue operation behind the enemy lines took place. But more importantly, as we were just explaining the timeline to you, first it was April 3rd, then it was April 4th, and then we see April 5th is when that particular crew member was finally brought out from the region. But what we're also showing you on our screens right now is how the US is depleting its missile arsenal at this point, and whether that is the very case, because US has used over 1,000 air defense interceptor missiles so far, at this point of time, standing in at this very war theater for more than some 35 days. This is one aspect that's being questioned time and again by the US administration, the Congress back at home as well. That is the military arsenal, is the missile arsenal of the US is getting depleted because of the kind of usage, that the rampant usage that is that this war is demanding from the United States at this point. Then the US is to deploy entire inventory of the Jasamar cruise missiles as well. That's also a very high-end, high technologically advanced missile system that's being used by the US in this very war. Next up, just to take you through what more is a part of this very arsenal, US is drawing missiles from stockpiles, from the Pacific stockpiles, that is. So at this point, what we see is the United States is coming out to use all assets that are available to them in this very war, be it the high-end drone systems, be it the high-end missile systems, all of it is being put to use, and that is why the budget has been passing through the roof and hitting through the roof at this given point of time when it comes to the US's side and the amounts being spent on this war. About 2/3 of the Jasamar cruise missiles are committed to the Iranian war already. That's what we were also talking about. We were just mentioning before this that the Jasamar missiles have been brought out and they are being committed to the Iranian war at this point of time. Remember, we're just taking you through the details of what all does the missile arsenal of the United States comprise of, and what all is slowly coming out to be used to an extent where they might even get depleted. US fired over 1,000 of Jasamars in just 4 weeks of war, and that is a clear picture. It shows how much of these equipments are being used, and which is why the fear of it being exhausted at this point. Well, on that note, viewers, we are wrapping up this very edition of the Bulletin right here, but do stay tuned to India Today as we keep bringing you all the latest updates into the next hour right here. Thank you for watching.
You are watching India Today.
Correcto. The taste of success.
If you want to scale the media heights, we will teach you the ropes. There is no peak in journalism that our mentors haven't scaled. So look no further. Join our postgraduate diploma programs and gain guaranteed internship and proven placement record with top media houses and companies. For more information, visit indiatodayMediaInstitute.in or call 95600 65465.
नमस्कार, मैं सना लाई हूं आपके लिए ताजा AQI अपडेट। दिल्ली 172, मुंबई 159, कोलकाता 151, बैंगलोर 496, चेन्नई 61, हैदराबाद 157।
You are watching India Today.
Swamiji, namaskar, swagat, a very, very warm welcome to this final session before the awards ceremony. Your arrival gave me an extended opportunity to talk to one of India's foremost CEOs, Mr. Vellayan Subbiah, and that just finished. And he was mentioning that your session is coming up. So I want to begin by asking you about this world of uncertainty, world of turmoil, a world of trade disadvantage that Indian CEOs are facing, because this event is, after all, recognizing India's best CEOs. In such a world and in such an environment, what management book or philosophy should a CEO follow?
Okay. A very good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I thought you're not very happy seeing me. A very, very good evening to all of you. My sincere gratitude to Mr. Arun Puri, I just saw him here. Of course, to Mr. Siddharth Zarabi, Mr. Gaurav Sab, and to everybody present here. Also later this evening, we are celebrating some of the leaders of the industry who are going to be awarded. Congratulations to all of them. And my sincere apologies for being a bit delayed. No public speech or an answer is meant to start with an apology, but I'm making an exception to that rule. And I'm making an exception to that rule because in my apology also kind of lies an answer to the uncertainty that we are facing today. I started off from where I live in South Mumbai, bang on time, to be here at least over 25 minutes ahead of time for the session. And I was right here at the corner, not aware that at the MMRDA grounds there's a musical concert going on and the entire place is absolutely chock-a-blocked, absolutely beyond my control, and I'm stuck there. I'm just meant to take one right turn and it's about 3 minutes away from that right turn, and I'm sitting at that right turn for 23 minutes. 23 minutes before I turn right.
Swamiji, you seem to be describing the situation at the Strait of Hormuz where
Exactly.
oil tankers are stuck.
Exactly, that's why I said, in my apology lies clarity to a lot of what's happening today. And trust me, the first thing that came to my mind as I was stuck in that mad traffic was just to get out of the car and probably walk my way here. Now that's not an easy game though. My driver tells me it's still about 1 kilometer. What if the traffic gets cleared and I'm on time, right? Number one. Two, it's not an easy game because I'm going to be bugged for selfies all the way, right? और पहले ना 30 साल पहले मेरे पास कोई सेल्फी के लिए नहीं आता था. आज सब लोग आ रहे हैं सर, स्पेशली लड़कियां. #monkswag. और मैं कई बार बोलता हूँ, a lot of times I'm saying, are they taking pictures with me? No. They're taking pictures with my good times. Good times, they're here. Tomorrow times change, nobody's coming. इसीलिए मैं कहता हूँ, जिनके ना आते थे जवाब उनके सलाम आने लगे. जिनके ना आते थे जवाब उनके सलाम आने लगे. मेरा वक्त क्या बदला, मेरे नीम के पेड़ पे आम आने लगे. Seriously guys, I'm telling you. So walking this 1 kilometer means it's not an easy game. And third, I'm on business today. National television. Imagine me sweaty. Coming for a session sweaty. Which is why in terms of uncertainty, the most certain thing to do is not be impulsive. while I was sitting in that car, the most thing that I wanted to do was act by my impulse, get out, walk it out here. And that's what most business leaders, or why business leaders, everybody wants to do when we are confronted with a challenging situation and uncertainty. Act based on impulse. Act based on gut. Somehow, for some reason, we all love closures. We all love instant closures because we don't want it in our mental space. And how do we get those closures? Shut it down by acting right away.
So perhaps the American president is looking for a closure the way he's bombing Iran. And it's leading to the war flaring up even further. When we look at the fallout of that, not our doing, but everyone here is facing the impact. For CEOs and for the employees of their CEOs, kal naukri rahegi ya nahi rahegi, that uncertainty, what would you tell the CEOs and what would you tell the employees?
Yes. Number one is that I think the theme was beautiful. The India advantage in a fragmenting world, right? And when we are talking about the India advantage, we're not just talking about demographics, we're not just talking about tech, we're not just talking about digitization, we're not just talking about governance policies. We are talking about the India advantage in terms of psychological and civilizational strength as well. And that's why I'm here. My session and my answers are more focused on what we have at the very core of the fabric of this nation. The ability to respond with clarity. It's not new to us. Tragedies are not new. Catastrophes are not new. Crises is not new. 1,000,000 times we have been invaded. 1,000,000 times we have gone through this. Even during COVID times we went through this entire catastrophic turmoil. We bounced back. Because in this country we have the ability to connect to our inner selves. We have the ability to pause. We have the ability to reflect. We have the ability to bounce back. I'm not saying that the world doesn't have it. I'm saying we have it specially. We have it specially. One of the greatest epics of this nation is the Mahabharata, in which is seated the philosophy of all times, the Gita. Now here we have in Mahabharata the gentleman Arjun, who's wanting to fight a catastrophic war. And as he's wanting to fight, Krishna takes his chariot before Bhishma and Drona. Those who are meant to be his allies are right now his foes. Those who are meant to be on his side are fighting on the opposite side.
You are describing Trump's world order, sir.
You take whatever you want, sir. I'm just talking the India advantage from the Mahabharata point of view, sir. Thank you, sir. And panic strikes. Chapter 1 of the Gita is panic. Ladies and gentlemen, impulsive reaction and panic is at the very core and gut of human beings. It's nothing unnatural. It's nothing out of the road. Absolutely unnatural. You see, like you said, employees to take care of, businesses to lead. How would someone not panic? How would someone not impulsively react? It's absolutely natural. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have a can of Sprite here, right? I wanted a bottle of champagne, but it doesn't look good in my hands. Imagine this. Imagine this. This is what the current situation is doing to every single one of us. There have been stimuli before in the form of COVID. There have been stimuli before in the form of the 2008 recession because of Lehman Brothers. There have been innumerable stimuli that were shaking us all up. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? This is what is happening to all of us. Reacting. What good does it do? What good does this do to me? What good does it do to my employees? What good does it do to my mental health? What good does it do to solve the issue, the challenge that lies right ahead of me?
But if there's so much turmoil, what do? Keep it? Sit on it?
Sir, that's the India advantage. That's the India advantage. What good does it do by pouring out? Goodness me, the India advantage. What is it? Which brand? No brand. Full gap. The India advantage. What good would this have done to anybody? Would it solve the current situation in the world? No. You're shouting, you're yelling, you're reacting, you're getting worked up, you're getting stressed up, you're losing sleep, you're throwing tantrums. Does no good. But when you start going by this is the Gita advantage. Stillness. Stillness. Why have we been known for stillness? Because in stillness you can reflect better. In stillness, you can prioritize better. In stillness, you can respond better. It's in stillness that we can do it, ladies and gentlemen, and which is exactly why there's no point getting worked up. The Gita teaches us to separate the controllables from the uncontrollables. What is the point in being focused on the uncontrollables? All we will get is depression, all we'll get is stress, all we'll get is getting completely messed up internally. What if we shifted to the controllables?
But what if bottom lines also have to be protected? Any CEO here has the responsibility to protect his bottom line.
Correct.
But should he retain every employee? Not bother about the bottom line, but tide over this crisis. And if this crisis lasts longer than 3 months or longer than 6 months, then what? Revenues are not going to come in.
Correct. How many of you guys played Treasure Hunt? Any of you? Oh my goodness me, nobody? Don't tell me. Wow. If you played the game Treasure Hunt, we know that there's a treasure hidden somewhere and nobody gives us the entire map with clarity that the treasure is there. If they give you the entire map with clarity, it's no longer a game, it's a logistic workout, right? So what are we given? The first clue. Clarity is not about having answers to all the questions right away when there's so much chaos and mayhem. Clarity is about what's my next step in keeping the ship afloat both for myself and my people, right? So what I do is I take the first clue and go to the next step where I find the next clue. From that next clue comes the next clue. And trust me, when the intention is sincere, when the effort is consistent, and when the concern for others in our organization is a priority, clues come our way. I'm not saying we don't work. I'm not saying we don't do what we are meant to do. I'm just saying answers to all the questions are not right there right now. Take the first step, find the next clue, take the next step, get the next clue, and that's how we're going to move forward in times of darkness. That's why current situation is about playing the treasure hunt, ladies and gentlemen. Don't look for all clues right away. Look at the clue right now. Do the best with whatever is at hand to keep the ship afloat. Right now it's not about growth. Right now it's not about P&L. Right now it's bloody about nothing. Right now it's about keeping the ship afloat and making sure that we don't sink and drown. And if we can do that, the next clue waits ahead, and in that next clue probably is the blueprint for growth as well. Yeah?
Amiji,
thank you.
What distinguishes, in your view, a business CEO from a sports person or a movie star? What I mean to ask you is that for a movie star, it's all about himself. His ability, how he delivers on screen. There is a support staff. Similarly for a sports star. But when it comes to managing a massive business, you have tens of thousands of employees and you can't do it all alone.
Correct.
In your view, is the ideal CEO style of working one of an alpha, the leader of the pack, or is he an organizer and team player at heart?
I would say, like we've been talking about human tendencies, and one of the human tendencies is always to be on an extreme. Extremism and polarization is a human tendency, whether it's religion, whether it's politics, whether it's business, whether it's entertainment. We tend to be on one side or the other a lot. So we'll find leaders who are on one side of the spectrum being alpha, without really being empathetic and sensitive to the needs of the people whom they lead. And we find some of them on the other end of the spectrum being touchy-feely and empathetic. And then when we don't have the alpha element, then it's hard to grow. I think in one of these sessions, I was here earlier, probably one of the editions of the Mind Rush, and I remember saying there that somebody said very beautifully, I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care. Right. I don't care how much you know. People who we lead are human beings. They have needs as much as you have needs. They have emotions as much as you have emotions. They have challenges and problems as much as you have challenges and problems. They are affected by daily struggles as much as you are affected by daily struggles. They have family issues and relationship conflicts as much as you have family issues and relationship conflicts. They have mental health issues and mental stresses as much as you, probably more. At least the privileged have money and power to deal with situations which they don't. Which is why when we are talking of a good leader who's not simply someone who's an alpha personality who will create a strategy and a blueprint and be a leader of a pack and say, bloody get it done. To lead a group of people, you need a high sense of morale. And especially in difficult times, you need a morale. People whose morale is high always will deliver more than what is expected of them. So when we simply take the alpha-Bayesian approach, we might probably be able to reach X by pushing people. But if we are able to build up the morale and inspire people, we'll probably be able to bring that same number to 10x. And which is why I think a balance between the two is necessary, sir. Sometimes taking just the touchy-feely, inspiring morale approach gets us nowhere. And sometimes just the alpha approach of just getting the numbers gets us nowhere. I hope I'm making sense.
I once called a CEO after that company had...
Sorry?
I once called a CEO after that company had laid off a few hundred employees, and I wanted his reaction to the story. Because a lot of those sacked employees had approached us, they were giving us internal details, uncomfortable details. They were blaming the management for wrong decisions which led to job loss. So I put all of those questions to me. And he kind of stopped me midway and said, Siddharth, I hope you realize what I am going through. I realize that the livelihoods of many people have been impacted. And I fear for my future and my family कि इनकी बुरी नजर ना लगे मुझे, because I've had to take this tough call. This is the reality of business. Sometimes very tough, very hard, very painful decisions have to be taken. I wonder if anyone has that thought inside, what guidance would you give to any business leader? How should he approach taking tough decisions, especially those that involve human beings?
Wow. The situation is tough and the question is tougher. Right. There are going to be times where we'll have to do what we need to do. Right? At the end of the day, you're a CEO of an organization. You don't own that business. I have a friend of mine who owns a business, has 4 verticals to his business. And one of the verticals, there was a fire in the factory, right? There were 1,000 people working in that particular factory, in that particular vertical. The fire in the factory, the first thing this man said was, called all the 1,000 people in, addressed them, said, we're not chucking any of you out. You're the ones who make us who we are. If you're the ones who toil for us, you're the one who give your sweat and blood and tears for us, you make us who we are. Without you, our blueprints, our strategies, our plans, our growth ambitions and aspirations are all only on paper. So it's you who make us who we are. Naturally, the first thing I want to do is not take you out. Currently, I'm in a very tough situation. The whole factory's down. Now the only option I have is absorb all of you in our other 3 verticals at a full salary that I'm paying you right now, here. And it's going to take about a year before the insurance claims are settled and before we rebuild ourselves and we reabsorb you in the same vertical back again. Now the gentleman did that. Wasn't an easy thing for him. 1,000 guys absorbed in 3 other verticals were being paid for practically not what their skill set was. And then a year later, everybody was brought back to the main business, that particular vertical. The loyalty that these 1,000 people have to this man is beyond words. Naturally, because in the times of calamity, look, in times of calamity is when you actually buy loyalty. It's not in times of prosperity that you buy loyalty.
Was this Arjun's dilemma as well on the battlefield?
Absolutely. It was Arjun's dilemma as well. What I'm trying to allude to here is, for a person who owns a business, it's still not all that hard. For a person who leads a business in a high position and is being paid for it, it's at the end of the day not his or her decision.
But what if the business is not making money?
Exactly.
Or if AI is taking away?
Exactly. So in which case it's very, very critical. It's human beings involved. और आपने तो एक और डायमेंशन ले आया कि किसी की नजर लग जाएगी, किसी की बद्दुआ लग जाएगी, इतने लोगों, ये तो मैंने कभी बिजनेस पैनल पे सुना ही नहीं था पहले. बट ये सवाल मुझे आया कि भाई ये सब करने की वजह से सामने वालों की बद्दुआ कितने लोगों के जॉब्स जा रहे हैं, कितने लोगों की लाइवलीहुड अफेक्ट हो रही है. I have always believed in one thing, sir. Sometimes hard decisions have to be made not because we want to make them, because the situation demands it. The situation demands such decisions. Can I finish this part? Because the situation demands such hard decisions at times. At least one thing can be clear. The intention to help, the intention to bring them back, clear, empathetic communication, connecting to others in our network to see how we can help them get relocated. With this friend of mine, he owned a business. He could do it in his own verticals. With the others, good leaders, of course the numbers are large and it's not all that easy. It's sitting on the stage, it's easier to say, I know what you all are thinking in your minds. It's easy to philosophize and sermonize from a stage. Nevertheless, when the intention is there, where attention goes, energy flows. So if we make that intention and a little bit of effort, at least a few people can be helped even in such a crisis.
You know, you spoke of crisis, and in crisis, the real character of a person is known.
Right.
We've all been through COVID and we've all survived the COVID crisis. There, and perhaps even now, there is a section that's being accused of either hoarding or black marketing or, profiting from misery. How should one deal with that situation? Because are we getting far removed from our civilizational philosophy, where we were growing up, we were reading Sant Kabir saying, Sai itna dijiye jame kutum samay, main bhi bhuka na rahun, sadhu na bhuka jaye. But now people want to hoard. How do you reconnect with roots?
Yeah. First of all, let's just take out this whole thing about what's coming up. Right. Let's not create this false information going all around in terms of the lockdown situation coming again. You know, there's so much going on all over the place. Whatever happens, we don't know, and nothing's certain at the moment. We have no idea, no clue of what's coming up. One thing is for sure, in a group of people, you will always find some people who go by the negative that exists in the society. There will be people, no matter what we do, no matter what we represent in this country, no matter how many dohas and shloks they've heard, no matter how much philosophy we know, they will go by not the most pleasant and not the most right thing to do. By and large, however, that's not what people are. Somehow or the other, I see goodness existing in the world more than negativity. I see people who are wanting to help and wanting to offer a helping hand, extend a helping hand to people more than people who don't, in whatever way they can. And which is why I feel fanning goodness, focusing on goodness, is so much essential as well, because people who are hardwired to do wrong, no philosophy, no legislation, no governance, no nothing can change them anyways, right? So why focus on those who are doing that stuff? Why not bring our attention and inspire those who can live rightly, who can give? And COVID showed that. During COVID times, we had hundreds and thousands of stories of individuals, of leaders, of organizations, of influencers, of entertainment stars, celebrities, who came out to help, who came out to stand strong for the world out there. So this is the message that needs to go out there. For those who are not going to listen to it, why focus on that stuff? It's all right. They will anyways be who they are. And let the laws of karma, let the universe come back to them. They will. No matter who we are, we live in a world of choices and consequences. If somebody makes a certain choice, the consequence to that is certain. Today, tomorrow, a year down the line, or 10 years down the line, consequences will come their way, for sure. Let consequences handle them.
A round of applause for the Gaur Gopal Das.
Thank you.
Protocol for being a business leader in these fragmented and challenging times. So much. Swamiji, thank you very, very much for your time with us today.
Thank you
Namaskar.
again.
बहुत बहुत
Good to
धन्यवाद.
be here.
You are watching India Today.
Hi, I'm Sana. Here's your weather update. Delhi maximum 31 and minimum 20 degrees. Mumbai maximum 28 and minimum 26 degrees. Kolkata maximum 37 and minimum 26 degrees. Bengaluru maximum 32 and minimum 24 degrees. Chennai maximum 32 and minimum 27 degrees. Hyderabad maximum 35 and minimum 25 degrees.
Presented by Parul University. यहाँ possible है.
Co-powered by
Panasonic AC, India का Captain Cool.
Closely.